just another example of fewer opportunities for left-leaning voices, right? We've been through this exercise where, especially from the social media perspective, the right is just kicking our ass. It is literally just kicking our ass because they've got more people, they've got more voices, they've got a bigger footprint. So I think that's part of the reason why it's really important that we, I don't know what we can do. I think Felice and I may disagree a bit on what's going to happen with TikTok, but anyway, I'd like to welcome my friend, and our co-host for this Monday edition of Facts and Felice. Felice.
Hey, can you hear me? I'm just finding my background really quick.
Okay,
just
no worries.
Fishing around.
Yeah, I got you.
1 sec.
It's okay. So, again, whatever happens. There we go. So I think the part for me, and before we get into our topic of the day, again, it's what does America need to be great? And we'll get into this conversation. We want to hear from many, many people today, but why don't we address the whole TikTok thing? Because I think it's important. We're now roughly a month away from the ban going into place. Maybe you and I disagree a little bit on the outcome. The thing for me was the DC Circuit's decision on Friday, which upheld the ban. And the hope was from TikTok that they would delay allowing the Supreme Court time to ponder whether or not they're going to take the case. They didn't. And the Supreme Court takes around 1% of all cases that come their way on appeal. So that's concerning to me. I know you feel like there's maybe some leverage either from ByteDance and or from the Chinese government. So where do you sit on the deadline of the 19th?
Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me okay? You hear me?
Yeah, we
okay?
got you.
I'm just making sure. Sorry, I didn't do an audio test before I started. I do think it's concerning. I just think that we have an imperialist Supreme Court, and it all does depend on Donald Trump again. Like, Donald Trump was lobbied. TikTok is very similar to, it's escaping me what the guy's name is. Another billionaire who's a large stakeholder in TikTok
Jeffrey
lobbied
Yass.
Trump. What? Who did you say?
Jeffrey Yass.
Yes.
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 But I'm try the veal.
I know, it's so early. Yes. So exactly. So I think the court's decisions are concerning, but not surprising. That TikTok bill was before it even was voted on, right? They had consulted lawyers on the right, the left. That was one of the most talented and scariest representatives in Congress that spearheaded and authored that bill. He was a 40-year-old, and I say was like he's no longer with us, but that's because Donald Trump drove him out of Congress. His name was Mike Gallagher, and now he's in the private sector, probably making an obscene amount of money. He just basically said, this isn't worth it to me. But he was one of the Republican rising stars who was able to get bipartisan support for that bill and get it through. So yeah, I'm not surprised the legal challenges are upholding. I'm really not, because that bill was one of the most combed through. Like, they consulted White House lawyers, they consulted Federal Trade Commission lawyers. I remember doing research on it, was going through, and why I was so concerned about it. I mean, I think ultimately there's two options, right? Either Trump steps in because he's a populist that doesn't want people to resent him.
Right.
This is ultimately Trump's problem.
Biden
he did this
theoretically, because there is language in the bill that says there's a 90-day sort of pause as long as there is specifics about divestiture, meaning it can't just be, we're going to try to sell it. There needs to be, whether it be a purchase and sale agreement kind of thing. So I think there is one sort of political lever that can be pulled, whether it's pulled by Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
It definitely has language inside it that names the president as, and things that he can do in order to delay or reconsider it. So I think ultimately it does rest with him. I think the Supreme Court, whether or not they take it, a lot of that has to do with Donald Trump. But I also think, I understand the Supreme Court doesn't take appeals. This is a Supreme Court case, whether or not a American corporation, because of Congress, can be essentially forced to divest or to be sold off. I mean, this is a landmark case. This is the 1% of cases the Supreme Court hears. Like there's no other case. I mean, this is the biggest case in business that will come up this year or in the last decade. So I do believe the Supreme Court will weigh in on this. I don't know. I understand they hear few cases. I just don't know what is a more relevant case than this. And then as we've seen the Supreme Court decide over and over, they think businesses are people. They give businesses more rights in a lot of cases than people. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what our American imperialist Supreme Court thinks of this. But I do think they work in concert with Donald Trump,
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. You're right. This particular court does tend to really want to weigh in on constitutionality issues, right? When it's not as ambiguous as some of the other decisions that they've made. We'd like to think that, granting a president immunity was was quite the landmark decision, and it was obviously the Dobbs decision. But you're right. This shapes many things, because then you can argue precedent no matter what it is. I think the biggest thing for me is the argument against allowing TikTok to continue in its current iteration was the whole national security issue, but it wasn't really explained to the American people, and nowhere can you find really what it was. It just seemed like an easy cop out to say, "Oh, national security." So, and I don't know. I mean, you may be right. I mean, this is the kind of case.
Oh no, and I looked into the case. Like TikTok offered, and again, my background is in tech. I'm not an engineer or a coder, but I worked in the tech industry for a social media company that pre and post IPO, and they offered many different firewalls to house Americans' data on American soil within American companies. Like anything that was brought up as a result of security issues, TikTok offered a remedy for. And I'm not just sitting here so completely pro TikTok. There are problems. There are problems with every social media company and data lakes. But I will say this over and over and over again. What we need is not to punish one social media app and be like, well, we think the Chinese are spying on us, which is delusional. What we need is what they have in the developed world, in developed countries all around the world. We need data privacy laws. If they cared about protecting Americans, protecting American children, we would pass sweeping. It wouldn't just be, let's force TikTok to sell. We would pass sweeping data privacy laws like they enjoy in the EU. This has nothing to do with if this app is safe or not. Facebook is just as not safe as this app. YouTube is just as unsafe as this app. X is just as unsafe as this app. If they cared about American people and they were trying to protect us, they would pass data privacy laws. But we talk about Republicans like to deregulate. The tech industry has never been regulated.
Right.
It is the Wild West. They lobby to the tune of billions of dollars to make sure they are not regulated. So if this was anybody in the government saying, we care about the American people, and there are people in Congress that say this, AOC talks about it, Ro Khanna talks about it, then you pass sweeping data privacy laws. This was a targeted issue, something that happened that both sides could get behind and agree upon.
Thank you, Pickles Raiders. Thanks, guys.
Pickles, I can't believe he's been up all night. I guess I shouldn't be surprised by that. But
I think it's a clone. I think he's got his little AI robot in the closet that comes out.
I know. Wouldn't that be? That would explain a lot.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's a really fair point. And that that's the confluence of unregulated capitalism too, right? Because I found some data recently that Elon Musk's wealth in 2012 was $2 billion. Today it's 440. And Musk's wealth in 2012 was $2 billion. Today it's 440. And Musk's wealth in 2012 was $2 billion. Today it's 440. And Musk's wealth in 2012 was $2 billion. Today it's 440. $7.25 an hour.
I can't even deal with thinking about Elon Musk's gross wealth. Like, imagine we're spent $277 million on the election. That's obscene. But I mean, it has paid off. His companies are growing in value every single day. His power is growing on the worldwide stage. So it's proved worth it. But yeah, I mean, if I cannot stress enough, if there was really a danger, if they cared about American citizens, if they cared about data privacy, if they cared about anything, they would pass data privacy laws.
Thank you again, Pickles Raiders. No, you're absolutely right. You're right about that. And I think it's a good segue, right? I mean, it's a really good segue to our topic for the day, which is what does America need to be great? And I think the question is, I guess it's the myth, or it's the effectiveness of MAGA, Make America Great Again, and the perception that what Trump and Trumpism and the MAGA movement was able to convince a lot of its voters was we have an opportunity to be great again. Make America Great Again in 2016, it seems like when he was the president, he wasn't able to make America great again because he's still running under that auspice of Make America Great Again. From my perspective, it all depends on the kind of society we want. We are, I've got some data that I think is really disturbing when we start to look at the numbers. So from obviously we lead in military spending, but the next 14 nations combined spend less on their military than the U.S. does. So we lead there. We are near the bottom in child poverty for the developed nations. We are near the bottom in, we've had lots of conversations about healthcare, number one in spending, 42nd in outcome. Firearms death, leading cause of death for children in our society. We know about income inequality. It's these kinds of factors about the kind of society that we want to have. So like what does it, or do we even have the potential? Do we even have the potential to be great if the system is so stacked against us, late stage capitalism, whatever that might be? If you look at quality of life, all indices from a quality of life perspective point to other nations. Scandinavian nations usually score high on that list. And let's think about why, right? They have universal health care. They have an approach to their society that they prioritize their citizens. We talk about why countries institute universal health care because they made a decision that it was important to them to have their society healthy. And that doesn't mean that they're sacrificing other things. That just became a priority. So from my end, I don't know. It may be too late in the game to get all that we potentially do, at least on the road to greatness or getting better. I use the word great because I think it's important that's the message that has been resonating in the ears of many for the last 8 years, right? Make America great. We're the greatest nation on earth. We're not. We're not even close. We're not even close.
Yeah, American exceptionalism is the greatest lie ever told. And I mean, the question to me is just, when will MAGA come out of cognitive dissonance? I say this all the time. I'm trapped in a life raft with people that are delusional and refuse to have the conversation of what we need to do to survive.
Right.
Exactly. If I can't get you to have an honest conversation with me about what we need to do as a group to survive, then we're all gonna unalive together. And I also was doing some research. I shared you on some of a doc, and also I'm going to put this in my Discord as well, just of different statistics and research and thoughts I was having on this topic. But I'm just going to focus on some of the wealth inequality in this country, right?
Go for it.
Because think about it. When you say MAGA's always like, we're number one, make America great again. We have the number one gross domestic product, right? But all of that money is concentrated at the top 1% of our economy, right? Real wages aren't outpacing inflation. So, like, as far as wealth distribution, the top 1% of Americans.
Everybody keep tapping, by the way, and Felice's pay apps are above her head, you guys. Please consider subscribing, and there's a gifting goal today. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. I joined a little bit late. Guys, tap the screen if you would like a message read out loud, question, comment, or concern, whatever. I'll periodically check. This is my Cash App and Venmo. Please support Facts as well. Gift. Tapping is clapping. I know, like, on Bylives, we've been doing such a great job with engagement. Please, guys, keep tapping the screen as much as you can while working. We appreciate it more than you know.
Indeed.
Okay, so here's some disturbing thoughts on the wealth inequality in this country. The top 1% of Americans own about 32% of the nation's total wealth. The bottom 50% of Americans hold only about 2% of total wealth. 50%, the bottom 50%, oh, that's me, of people in this country.
Me too.
Hold only 2% of the wealth. Okay. The top 10% of Americans owed approximately 69% of total household wealth. So income distribution, the top 1% of earners capture about 20% of national income. CEO to worker compensation ratio, which I talk about this when I talk about this all the time when you talk, I mean, when you understand what Marx was talking about, when you understand Marxism is a bad word. He was just a philosopher who did a lot with labor, with the average European white male laborer, just saying, hey, do you understand? It doesn't seem the French Revolution was a great idea, but those ideals of equality, liberty, they don't seem to be bearing out in this, ideology that is capitalism. Like inequality is growing.
Marx spoke on our behalf, basically.
Yeah, that's all he was saying. He was basically a very smart philosopher who showed up at like union strikes. That's essentially what Marx was doing. The top 1% of I read that one. CEO to worker compensation ratio has grown from 20 to 1 in 1965 to over 340 to 1, meaning a CEO of a company makes 340 times on average what the average worker makes. In 1965, what they consider, the end of the golden age of capitalism, or when it was starting to come to an end, that was 20 to 1.
Correct.
And that's what all socialism is about regulating capitalism so that is smaller, right? Mm-hmm. Right. You're never going to make it. One of the largest socialist companies in the world, it's called Mondragon. It's out of Spain. I think that's about where the high executive ratio to average worker is 20 to 1. It's about lowering the gap. Should the CEO of a company be making 340 times what the average worker makes? I don't think so.
We went through that exercise last week with the healthcare salaries for the largest healthcare companies in the U.S. in particular. And on average, their annual compensation from a salary perspective is $25 million. That's just salary. That's not dividends. That's not stock options. That's not anything else. And again, your premiums go up. You get denied care. They get richer and richer. Stockholders make money off of our backs. We pay into a system that doesn't support us when we need it the most. Unregulated capitalism.
Since 1979, wages for the top 1% have grown by about 160%. During the same period, wages for the bottom 90% grew only about 26%. Real wages adjusted for inflation for most workers have remained relatively stagnant since the 1970s. This is disturbing. Now let's talk about the racial wealth gap in America. Thank you so much, Bobby. Love you. Median white family wealth. Prepare to be sickened. This is sickening. Median white family wealth, approximately $188,200, which is not even a lot of money. Let's just be clear.
Not today.
But median black family wealth, $24,100. That is below the poverty line. Median Hispanic family wealth, $36,100. All Republicans do is increase income inequality. If you look at the trends, Democrats get in office, they try to bring, lower it a little bit. Republicans vastly increase it.
And again, we think about
MAGA would have to accept that fact in order to make America great again. They would have to accept that conservative policy is creating income inequality.
To even have that conversation,
exactly,
they would have to accept that, right? So the reality of what's the number? I think it's 14 billionaires that are in Trump's cabinet, something like that, some ridiculous number where their combined wealth is $300 billion plus, and that doesn't even include Elon and Vivek. Right. It's like, it's crazy. So the reality of this, you're exactly right. All those factors about what's holding us back as a society. I believe in this whole theory of all boats rise, right? You give an opportunity for everyone to compete. It's not equally. We have to talk about that, but opportunities to compete, to achieve wealth or to achieve happiness. The reason that we often refer to Scandinavian countries in this sort of life, fulfillment of life, optimism is because of what their society has prioritized. It doesn't mean that there's not billionaires in Scandinavia. It doesn't mean that corporations aren't making profits. It just means that they've decided as a society, it's more important. Their life expectancy is higher. Their poverty rates are negligible, if any. I mean, their society provides care for the houseless people. It's again, we look at our society now, we look at a cabinet loaded with billionaires. Do we honestly expect billionaires to be looking out for us when they've been riding the coattails of this sort of, bend the knee to billionaires for the last 40 years, 50 years? It's just like, I know the term all boats rise. I get it, Maria, but it works. That's all boats rise. In theory, the opportunity is if we provide better.
I'm with you.
If we provide a better system, it gives more people the opportunity to rise. I understand it's connected to trickle down. I get it. You're right. Good call out there. That's why we have the smartest chat in the world. They're amazing people.
Oh, I love that's the best thing. Crowdsourcing information is the most amazing thing. Gender pay gap. I just got to call it out for women. And someone asked if this is in the Discord. These are just notes I was making last night and this morning of different statistics I was looking at. Yes, these are in the Discord. As usual in the live sources section, or maybe not actually. Ask Chrissy. Chrissy is the one that organizes that. I think I might have misspoke, but wherever they usually are. We're going to, if we don't already have a separate facts and Felice section in the Discord, we're going to make one, I think. Gender pay, gender pay gap. Women earn approximately 83 cents for every dollar earned by men. The gap is much wider for women of color at current rates. Gender pay equality isn't, sorry, I think I didn't finish that sentence. That was the last sentence. I didn't finish writing it. Never mind. But yeah, I would suggest, I was going to look up specific gender pay gap statistics, but I ran out of time. And if you know anything about the gender pay gap, I mean, it is crazy. So if you're a Black disabled woman in this society, let's just, for example, say, I always talk about intersectionality. The seat of power is straight, white, Protestant males. And for every degree you are removed from that, like say you're a woman, you're a Black woman, you're a disabled woman, you suffer exponentially.
Right. Again, everybody, tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Our conversation today, obviously, goes in a million different directions, but the topic is, what does America need to be great? Welcome, Andy. I'll step right back. You guys can have a conversation. Thanks for being here, friend. I'll be right back.
Yep. Thank you for having me. So the way that I kind of look at it, and there was an interesting video about this, what does America need to be great again? And Felice, you actually brought up some really good points about the wealth and income inequality in virtually every aspect. And that is a gross number to even consider. But I think what realistically, just to counter everything from MAGA's point of view of what they think is going to, in quotes, make America great again, is we need to, one, address the wealth inequality, but it boils down to a lot of other things that I think the Biden-Harris administration was trying to pass, but has been virtually not successful in. And I think what needs to happen for America to be great again is that somebody needs to say, okay, we want to have the best infrastructure in the world, and we're going to tax the wealthy in order for that to happen. And that might be a stretch, but to say, a 20% increase on the 1%'s taxes will go to probably the best infrastructure in the world. Universal health care for all, increasing the minimum wage. And then, that in turn will finally give some people in the working class and below the working class a tiny bit of a cushion to go pursue more fulfilling ventures. That's
incentive. Incentive capitalism. Right. Yeah. I mean, I heard what you're saying. I think, let's just use the last 40 years, right? So we can frame this that, it's an more easily digestible conversation. So starting with Reagan, right? Because that's when we really started to see, and you touched on it, Felice, maybe the 60s, 70s, but let's use Reagan because we can blame him for everything. That's when the wealth gap started to get significantly wider. When you started to see the massive reduction in corporate taxes and tax cuts for the rich, that's when we can really start to see the wealth gap get wider and wider. So for the last 40 years, it's been about crony capitalism, in the wealth gap. Maybe the next 40 years are about the worker. If that's an opportunity, like again, prioritizing the things that matter, it's still going to take courage. It's going to take electing officials down ballot who are willing to say no to corporate donor money. It's about a Supreme Court. Sadly, we're stuck with one for a very, very long time. Because I think the likelihood of Alito and Thomas resigning or retiring is very likely during the Trump administration. So it's about overturning Citizens United. It's about prioritizing worker rights. It's about prioritizing, marginalized communities. So I don't know if that's possible. Again, I've been accused of being an idealist, and I'll own that. But that's what I'm talking about. How do we, if you truly want to, again, why, from an American exceptionalism, do we never talk about having the best education system in the world, the best healthcare system in the world? We don't have those conversations enough.
Or even the best infrastructure
exactly.
in the world. And, you touched on something pretty interesting, like blaming Reagan for everything. While I agree with you on that, there's also the factor of massive deregulation in virtually every single working department. And, regulation does help to a degree, albeit like I don't know the ins and outs of regulation, and I'll own that. But at the same time, I do believe regulation does need to be implemented. So that way, one, again, going back to my previous point, having regulation be towards infrastructure and increasing the minimum wage. So again, that working class people can go pursue more fulfilling ventures, be it,
right,
through social media or starting a business of their own. That would be the ideal scenario to truly make America great again. And, the housing crisis, and it's like, if people also saw like increasing the wealthiest 1%'s taxes by even 15 or 20%, that could be enough to address the homelessness crisis or the affordable housing crisis that's currently happening. And if I'm wrong, please tell me.
Well, I mean, no, you're not. You're saying a lot of different things, but
yeah.
First of all, Reagan was a deregulator. So
yeah.
Just to be clear, Reagan, that's what they believed in. Conservative policy is the biggest lie ever. It's the way they sell it to MAGA is to say, we don't need any of these regulations. All of these regulations are a problem for you. They're a barrier to entry to you. I hate the word regulation. What we need to do is, what they're talking about is they hate regulations for antitrust, right? They want huge mergers to be approved, right? They want less bathroom breaks for workers. They want to not have to pay overtime to people making under $55,000 a year, which is just a ruling of a Trump federal judge and a nationwide ruling in Texas. While Trump promised to no tax on overtime. Yeah, there's not going to be tax on overtime because people aren't getting it anymore.
Right.
So yeah,
to work overtime but not get paid for it. Yeah.
Conservative policy is deregulation. It's
Exactly.
the belief, and that is what that is the lie that Reagan told. If we deregulate, if we remove all barriers for the 1%, for the richest people in this country, and we don't tax them, we let them do whatever they want, some of that wealth will trickle down to us. And we have decades and decades of data that says that is the exact opposite. What happens in crony capitalism is a sine wave. Boom, bust, and at the bottom, during the bust, huge transfers of wealth happen and they transfer up. Right?
Always.
And that's what
Right.
that's what deregulation is built on. Is conservative policy, and it's the false idea that if we don't bother really rich people, let them do whatever they want, they'll do the right thing by us. And regulation, which is what free market capitalism is, a great idea, but what we know is it doesn't exist, right? In reality, there's no such thing as free market capitalism. It becomes crony capitalism. And
it also led to the Great Depression. So
and we use free market. It doesn't exist, right? It's crony capitalism. So because it doesn't exist, what we need and what all socialism is such a bad word. It's well-regulated capitalism, right?
It's true.
That's all. That's what socialism is. It's saying, hey, when we let capitalism just do what it does, Rich people are just getting richer. The income inequality is growing. So we're going to regulate it. We're going to use impact studies. We're going to use data and science, and we're going to regulate the capitalistic market so that it's fairer.
No, of course.
Yeah,
And I actually do want to add on that, Felice, because socialism does get misconstrued as just like either charity or it's like we're trying to take money from somebody else. That's not the case. It's like for the working class people to see more fruits of their labor. And that's basically it. And a quote that I actually really think goes towards socialism is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow. And what I think about that is, okay, the working class people are entitled to, to see more of the fruits of their labors. Now, albeit, people who sit at the top trying to build a company, yeah, they're getting richer and richer, but the wealth gap gets wider and wider. So that's
one of the biggest transfer, and this is disturbing to think about this, and Bernie talks about this a lot. One of the biggest periods of the transfer of wealth in our society was during COVID. If you think about that, that's disgusting to think about, but that's the reality of it, right? I mean, it's similarly if we use the economic model of the 25% tariff that Trump wants to put, on Mexico and Canada, our biggest trading partners. Do we think that corporations are only going to jack up their prices 25%? Of course not. They're going to justify it for a particular reason. Any window, any opportunity, any opening, they will use to increase their wealth. And once again, we have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy in charge of a government agency, air quote, government agency that's designed to transparency, root out inefficiency. They're the ones that are going to be identifying that when they have hundreds of billions of dollars in government contracts now. I mean, it's just this myth. And now that Trump has literally come out and said, "Oh yeah, it's going to be hard for me to lower prices," and we already see the spin from his echo chamber saying, "Well, yeah, it is kind of hard, but he'll get to it eventually." And it's just more of the same. It's more of the same. It's just more of the same. It's nuts.
And this whole government efficiency thing, to me, it's just okay. I don't like how it's working, so I'm just going to fire everybody in that department, and it's going to run the way that I want because I know what's best. Yeah, right.
By the way, guys, I'm participating in Live Fest. I'm not even sure what it is, but it's there, and there's a gifting goal today too. And please consider subscribing. Thanks for jumping in today, Andy. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
See you later. Again, for us, I know for you, Felice, we've talked about this. It's a matter of the kind of society that we want to have. Is there enough courage for people to stand up and say enough's enough? I mean, what we see oftentimes is apathy. We see people, celebrating, if you will, Brian Thompson's passing and, and martyrizing Luigi. But what are we going to do with it? What's going to happen? Are we going to rage? Are we going to rage about it in social media platforms? Are we going to stomp our feet, or are people going to stop being apathetic and do something about it? And what does that mean? So part of our conversation today is, what would that look like? How do we make these kinds of changes? How do we do that?
And that's why I'm interested in having like a honest, open dialogue with people that, believe Donald Trump is going to, do that for them. Cause that's what I say. Our survival in America, and I say we are in an involuntary lifeboat. We're all in the same one, floating in the middle of the ocean. And our survival depends on enough people recognizing who took their money and how we can get it back.
Yeah. So Chopper Lie, can I address this? I don't care about Brian Thompson either. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to lose sleep. I have no sympathy for, one less millionaire just means more parking. The reality is, though, is what's going to change in our society. And I went on record last week, and if I offended any marginalized group, I apologize. I guess I'll go my mea culpa right now. I have no expectation that anybody from any marginalized group is going to reach across the aisle to anybody on the right. I guess my question is, and somebody made this comment in our live on Friday night, and I thought it was brilliant. Somebody from the LGBTQI community said they'd be willing to engage in a ceasefire if it meant universal health care. And I guess that's what I'm talking about, right? I guess that's what I'm talking about. So no love lost. But if we've reached the point where our response is going to be vigilante justice, and that doesn't work to change the system, where do we go next? That's the problem. Like, where do we go next if that doesn't work?
Yeah, I made the comment. Just this is just an off note, and this is my thought on it. Like, I mean, and if you don't know the definition of bodily autonomy, I'll just let you know. It's being able to make decisions without fear of for yourself, for your own person, without fear of coercion or violence. Right. So Brian Thompson had his bodily autonomy violated. I'd just like to point out, like, when we talk about how are we going to make America great, women don't, half of the population, over half of the population of this country do not have bodily autonomy. Our bodily autonomy is being violated every day. So, right when exactly the time when I hear men in this country start to care that the maternal mortality rate is skyrocketing, that black women are 3 times more likely to unalive in childbirth than anyone else. And, indigenous women, it's even higher. I believe it's 5 point something times more likely to unalive in childbirth. The infant mortality rate is increasing since the Dobbs decision, right? Preterm births are increasing. We are creating, right? I do not have bodily autonomy. It sounds to me that there's a lot of people in this country who are outraged that a man's bodily autonomy was violated. I think that we should take note that a lot of people's bodily autonomy are being violated in this country every single day. Women don't have it.
One of the things, throughout the morning, again, the box is open because we want to hear a variety of opinions on this. Like, what does America need to be great? Do we think it's ever been? I don't think it's ever been great. I'm tired of this American exceptionalism, making all these claims to all this freedom. We have so much less freedom than so many other countries on earth because they prioritize healthcare for one, they prioritize education for another, they prioritize human rights for a third, et cetera, et cetera. Incarceration rates by country. The U.S. has the highest incarceration rate in the world, 724 people per 100,000. The U.S. also incarcerates nearly 30% of the world's incarcerated women, despite only making up 5% of the world's female population. We're below some countries that you would never want to be on a list with. That's an example. Like to Felice's point, child poverty. We lead in child poverty. We lead in firearms death. We lead in military spending. We lead in rah-rah patriotism for sure. But the things that should matter on the collective as a society, we fail. We fail in education. We fail in healthcare. We fail in preservation of rights. We fail in workers' rights. Yes, we do have a lot of innovation. We do have a lot of things that we'd like to think are great and sure, but the basic needs, the basic necessities. I believe healthcare is a human right, and we just don't get there. Jody,
we're almost to 100K. You guys are doing an amazing job tapping the screen. Let's get to 100K for facts. Tap the screen. Also share the live. If you don't have anyone specifically you want to spam and share with, just push the copy link button as much as possible. That counts as a share. It is much, much appreciated. And again, question, comments, if you would like to support us, this is my Cash App and Venmo. Facts, where is yours? Or everyone knows it? It's in his bio, in his bio as well. And if you have anything you would like to be read aloud on the show and you would like to donate to us, we will do that as well.
On that note, thank you, Stephanie, for your donation on Cash App. Thank you for the work you say. I appreciate you very much. And also Ben, thank you, Ben. Appreciate you as well for your time and for your support of our channel and what we do here. Again, I don't want to think, I'm not naive to know what we're up against here. When there is so much power at the top, and once you achieve that level of power and prestige and your place in the hierarchy, it's difficult to give it up. I think if we can just think about some of our elected officials who went into government standing for something, your favorite person in mind, Felice, Nancy Mace, when you have a particular plan to go in and serve your populace with you run on protecting the rights of marginalized communities, then you become public enemy number one against those communities when you get a taste for power. It takes courage. It's sad to say that, but in our society, it takes courage to stand up to money. It takes courage to say, I'm going to serve the people that voted for me. I'm not going to take every single corporate dollar that becomes available to me. And that's sadly where we're at. Good morning, Francis. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm a friendly. I just wanted to say that up front. I'm a friendly. But I wanted to say, can we stop platforming misogynist and racist?
I do my best.
Call them out in real time. Call them out in real time, kick them, and move on.
I do my best. I think we all do.
On my show, The People's Receipts, I don't really even have guests anymore, pretty much for that reason. I'm just tired of hearing from men that are awful. So yeah, no problems there.
Yep, we don't disagree, Francis. That's sort of my mantra in this. Oftentimes, you have to unpack it a little bit, but as soon as we discover who they are, they don't have a seat here. We
Well,
invite them to,
and
we invite them
I
to dinner,
wasn't
so to speak.
saying this for you two mostly, because you two are awesome, and I love listening to you guys.
Thank you.
I'm saying it for the chat. I'm saying it for the people who are in the box or who could potentially be in the box. We don't want to platform you anymore. We don't want to hear your opinions anymore. They're not valid. They're not.
I appreciate that, Francis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You got it. You talked about child poverty. The U.S. again leads all nations in having the highest rates of child poverty at 20.9%, while the overall average globally is at 11.7%. Again, the U.S. leads in child poverty.
Well, that's the point. You talk like you hear MAGA always saying, "Oh, we're going to protect women and children." You guys have never protected women and children. Statistics show that your policies are having an adverse effect. Your AB bans in the maternal deserts you have created in the South are disproportionately harming women and children. You guys are talking about women need to have babies. Women need to have babies. You're making it harder for women to do that. You're making it so women in rural Texas are hours away from the closest OBGYN. Everything conservative policy is doing the opposite of making America great again. It's doing the opposite of creating stronger families. It's doing the opposite of empowering children and allowing them to survive in society.
And you wonder why the birth rate is down in the U.S. is because so many families who want to start families realize how the system. Why would they bring someone else into the system until the system can change? Case in point, the national average for a single person to live comfortably in America in December of 2024 is $93,933 annually. That's $7,827.75 per month. Single adult, 94, national average, 93, two working adults and two children, $209,000 annually. If you want to have a family with two kids, $209,000. That is crazy. I mean, there's a term in marketing, pricing yourself out, right? When you're in competition with when you want to go to market, you better have a good pricing strategy. How do you combat that? The answer is you can't, because the system is rigged against the worker. Has been forever.
Yeah, and I think it's a two-pronged argument too. Like the first thing is exactly like we were just going over income inequality. So it's easy for people to say, "Oh, this is America. We're number one gross domestic product. Why wouldn't people want to have children here?" Well, most of us are actually living, right near the poverty line, right? So that actually we can't afford children here. And then number two, like the second piece of that and what we've learned, right? And I talk about this all the time. Like you can read these studies and it's fascinating that we're the most able-bodied workforce, the largest able-bodied workforce is going to be in the world, like by 2040 is Africa, right?
Yeah.
And that defies what economists have always thought, what people thought, which was, hey, in well-developed nations that are doing well economically, right, where people can afford to have children, people will have as many children as they can afford to have. But it turns out, right, there are psychosocial factors involved. When women don't have bodily autonomy, when people fear for their future, when people don't believe that they know what they're doing here on this earth and what their direction is, they are less likely to reproduce, right? I mean, those are the facts. And it's not just America. Developed nations all around the world, the birth rates are declining.
Mm-hmm. I think, as part of this conversation, as we know, the cost of higher education goes up and up, and the Department of Education being gutted to turn it into a virtual DOE, whatever the hell that means, that involves government loans, right? And I've got a daughter who will be applying to colleges next year, and I met with my financial advisor last week, and I'm like, My goal is to be as poor as I can be on paper so we can get as much government money as possible. And he's like, don't worry about that. You are poor on paper. I'm like, sweet. Yes, at least I got that going for me. But that's the circumstance. And there are families that are looking at the future of putting their kids, helping their kids go to college, right? Not every family can afford it. You have to rely on some loans. If that money's not there, then that creates another opportunity for people who look like me, who don't have the money to send their kids to school. And there will not be government subsidized loans there. Yes, predatory lending still exists and always will, which is part of the reason why I think student loan debt should be forgiven. But this is the world that we now live in, where the corporations are prioritized. Just again, not to beat the horse or beat the drum on this whole healthcare issue, but a business model in the healthcare industry is to deny claims. It's part of a P&L. Every single year when they're talking about their potential P&L for that year, it's like we can assume 30% of our loan or of our claims will be denied. That is unacceptable. We can't accept that as a society. We just can't. Again, the argument against, I'll say this publicly now in front of 1,000 people. If there's anybody can come into the live right now and tell me an economic argument or a social argument against universal health care, I will delete my account on the spot.
Because there isn't one. I mean, that's the bottom line. If you're a capitalist, if you're a Republican, the thing that makes the most sense is to keep your workforce healthy.
Exactly.
You are killing off your workforce in real time, and there is the science shows it, right? Americans are less healthy, life expectancy is lower, right? I mean, birth rate is dropping. Every single thing every factor says the workforce that we need to continue succeeding in capitalism is dying off. Right. And then on top of that, imagine this. You guys are capitalists. You love capitalism. And then to know that because we're not providing universal health care, comprehensive mental health care, you're killing off your own capitalistic workforce. Then what's plan B? That would be to supplement the American workforce with able-bodied, intelligent folks, immigrants. Exactly. That's what America was built on. And now, because of your bigotry, your new plan is to kick those people out of the country that are a huge piece of our economy, that are paying into your Social Security and your Medicare and are never going to take it back out again, right? And those are undocumented workers. I could go into the value of immigrants here on work visas, which is, I mean, astronomical.
Crazy.
And you refuse to give women health care. You refuse to give children health care. You refuse to give anyone health care because personal responsibility. So as your own capitalistic workforce dies off, you say, hey, let's not let anyone else come here to supplement our workforce. We don't want brown and black people here. You are ensuring your own destruction because of bigotry and, general lack of knowledge of how economics works.
Erica talked about this last week because the conversation about the NHS came up in the UK and how they have more restrictions on some of their food, which is true, but that's part of the reason why the government is involved, because they're going to say, listen, we can't have all these toxins in food because we subsidize healthcare in our country. So we want our society to be healthier. I mean, they don't offer, peppermint flavored yodels on every shelf, although who doesn't love a peppermint flavored yodel? I'm just saying they're more invested. They're literally more invested in the health of their society. And there's not an economic argument or social argument against. Everybody, please keep tapping. Again, Felice's pay app is above her head. We are participating in Live Fest, whatever that means. Do that. And then there's a gifting goal today as well. I'm going to read this real quick because I found it. I think it's fascinating. It's brief, but I just think it's really important. I'll send it to you, Felice. It's going to get harder and harder to choose each other as fascism spreads and deepens its grip. It's going to get very tempting to try and ride it out, only looking out for you and yours. We must resist. The exhaustion of the moment may require more rest, and that's okay. But let us be sure that rest does not slip into apathy or cognitive dissonance. If we have the privilege of freedom to rest, if we have the privilege of freedom to rest, it likely means we are at a lower risk of fascism's wrath. We must stand with those most at risk. May we not allow our hopelessness in this moment to expand into a hopelessness across all time. May we understand that resistance requires rest, that we might specialize in one area of the struggle that suits our skills, and that is valid and needed. May we understand that contributing to the struggle against fascism is not optional, especially for those able to access rest. May we perceive that we were made for these times, this moment. May we perceive that we can release the lie of an easy life that many of us were sold and embrace the struggle that brings joy as well as grief. May we perceive that we are for each other, that for each urge we feel to close our circle smaller around us, we can invite another person in. Resist, rest, rejoice, repeat. We do not accept defeat. I kind of like that because I think that's the whole galvanization of our society that I'm hoping we can gain from what we are now seeing, that we've been telling people about for years.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could not agree more. The problem with capitalism is it's the individualism, right? American exceptionalism is about the individual, right? The way to repair our society is recognizing, thank you so much, Cookie, is recognizing that we're a community, right? And that the way, it's Brene Brown that says, the way back to each other is vulnerability, is empathy, is being able to see yourself in your neighbor and empathize with them and say, I look at you, I feel for you. We're all in this together. Americans have completely lost community. And I think the pandemic exacerbated that and our mental health issues in a terrifying way. And again, we circle back to every other developed country in this world has universal health care.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think the pandemic is a really good point where in an opportunity during that time, the biggest single transfer of wealth we've seen in modern American history. While people were suffering, we saw the largest transfer of wealth in modern American history. The rich got richer. People lost their lives. An argument to be made that during that time, if we'd had universal health care, I think back to when Trump was president during that time. He could have prioritized that. He could have come out and said, we are the United States of America. We are going to handle this better than anybody else. He could have made MAGA masks. He could have, whatever that would have looked like. You could have said, this is what we are going to do as a nation. Instead, nope. We'll get through it in 2 weeks.
He could do it now.
Sure,
if Trump think about this, if Trump wanted to consolidate his power, if Trump wanted to stay at office and never leave, if he gave the American people universal health care, think how much you'd be willing to forgive him. I mean, we wouldn't, but I'm just saying, if you could you and your children could go to the doctor, you could get the mental health care, all of the things your child, our children on the spectrum could have the, supplemental care that they need. If universal health care was available in this country, if Donald Trump was truly smart, that is what he would do, because he could truly do anything and those people would get behind him. They're not true conservatives, right? No. Conservative policy is much different than what's going on now. All they do is spend. And if he would just spend it on creating universal health care, that would be the move for Republicans. But that's how it's truly, they don't care.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Like we've talked about how, again, being blind on the left, about how there are certain things like defending democracy is great. There'd be no reason why people wouldn't want to defend democracy. The overwhelming majority, our population is 52%, 51% women, 49% male. I think that's the number, something like that. Overwhelming majority of our population, protecting their rights to their body. You think that's a good selling point? Yeah, well, it didn't work. We still lost the election. But imagine, to your point, imagine a Republican endorsing universal health care and having it gain traction, right? Imagine that. And then if Trump is in office or a Republican president's in office, then that is such a massive win for our society. And
Mitt Romney did it in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. And that was what the Medicare for All model that Bernie's been talking about was sort of based on. It was effective. It was extremely popular. Again, the argument, there is no argument against. There is none. $6 trillion by 2027 we are going to spend on healthcare. $6 trillion. And by 2027, the healthcare industry in America will make $1 trillion in profit.
The only argument is billionaires, the donor classes holdings in companies like Big Pharma, right? There's shareholder holdings in companies like Big Pharma, stock market holdings in Big Pharma, in insurance, right? It's about money.
Yeah. The insurance companies invest in the R&D. The insurance companies are connected to the patents for new life-saving drugs. So it's one big circle. It's one big circle. I mean, we go back to this a lot. There's so many issues that would be solved in our country if we had universal health care. Medical debt, medical debt being one of the, I think it still is the leading cause of bankruptcy in our country. Medical debt goes away. Our society becomes healthier. The cost of, we employers save money because they wouldn't have to expend the money that they wouldn't have to spend on benefits, right? And it becomes this people staying in dead end jobs, the mental health improvements. It's just crazy.
Think how it feeds capitalism. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. Think about small business owners. You want to talk about deregulations for small business owners. Imagine if you want to start a business, you're an entrepreneur, and, that's not your responsibility to pay for people's health care.
That's right. That's right.
That's a buried entry. Or you want to just go out on your own and try to start a business, but you're worried about how you'll go to the doctor, or you have children. How will they go to the doctor? So you can't start a new business venture.
That's right. We would all get paid more. It's just the reality, right? Good morning, Misha. How are you?
Hey, morning.
Good morning.
I heard y'all talking about like the whole healthcare thing. I've been trying to get up here for a while, and it's weird, as you said, that people are in debt because of healthcare. Like healthcare is a literally lucrative business here, and nobody's understanding that they're literally sucking your money dry, and these 100% charges that you have to pay on your bills when your insurance only pay 0.2%, it makes no sense. Like, that's just how it is. It really makes no sense. And then two, what I had to learn the hard way is when you get a job here and it's the job description says provide healthcare for 1K, whatever, it's actually you paying for your healthcare. Now, it might sound weird for you guys to hear that statement, but where I'm from, our job provide healthcare as in you walk in day one when you sign up for your job and they ask who your dependents. You put them down, which is your children, could be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever you choose to have, and your company pays for that completely. That does not come out of your salary every month. You do not see a deduction from your salary that says $250 per month for healthcare or $100 per week for healthcare. Your company pays for that completely, right? And then when you go to the doctor, I'm still learning the hard way, because when I heard the word copay, I looked as stupid as Dave, because we don't pay that. Literally, we swipe our cards, which is the health card that your company pays for, which is your job, and that's it. You leave the doctor, you leave the pharmacy, you go swipe your card again. If I have healthcare, my husband have healthcare, that's two health cards for my children.
I guess I'm a bit confused, Misha, because you pay premiums. It's not like your company doesn't just does your company subsidize your health insurance 100%?
100%. That's how they do it in Jamaica. You don't pay anything at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, in Jamaica. Right, I'm sorry, in Jamaica. I was confused. I thought you were referencing the U.S. I'm sorry.
No,
Yes,
I came to the U.S. and I F around and find out the hard way, because I didn't know that was a thing. So I thought, okay, yeah. It said it provide healthcare. When my husband said no, because he's from the US, he says, no, they facilitate you paying. So you pay your premiums. I'm like, no, the job description said it provides healthcare. He's like, are you slow? And I'm like, I'm not slow. I'm just saying that's how we do it in our country.
Yeah.
Your job pays for your healthcare. We don't have deductibles. We don't have copay. The only thing is sometimes you might see like a certain prescription said, okay, they pay 80%. You pay like the equivalent of like $2 or $3 or $10 the most. Yeah. But if you do have two health cards, like my job, let's say we're married, Steve, right? Your job gives you healthcare. My job gives me healthcare. Mm-hmm. I can get one for you. You get one for me, and we get two for our kids. So we end up with two health cards. Right. So when you go to the doctor, they'll swipe the one that has, say, your job gives you a better premium one, and mine like the basic. They'll swipe yours for like the better premium one, and then for mine, the basic, it will pay for like whatever's left over on the bill, and then that way it's 100% on your company. That charge is now taken away from you.
Yeah, I mean,
However, do we have the best healthcare? I would debate that we don't. Our public sector is crap. Private sector is amazing. But then again, if you do have the health insurance can pay for the private sector, then you're good in that
well,
terms.
and Misha, there's an example. I think you would agree that, I mean, Jamaica would not be considered,
A
an
first world?
overly
No.
developed nation,
No,
right?
it's a third world country. It's a developing country. That's the word.
I love it. I've been there 7 times. I've been referred to as a Jamaican. You and I've had that conversation. It's one of the
Yeah.
greatest places on earth. But there's an example where an underdeveloped nation still prioritizing healthcare for its citizens, still
Yeah.
prioritizing that,
Mm-hmm.
still making the case that it's still more important than anything else, right?
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
it's weird that we hear of the American dream, but we didn't hear of the American debt. You didn't hear of the fact
Right.
that you're going to come here and
Right.
be $2, $3, $4, $8,000 in the hole for healthcare. And it's something simple like your child falls in a daycare that should have taken care of your child, ended up with a knot on their face. You have to go to the emergency room because the child care, it's in the public system. It's in the daycares are part of the public child care, whatever.
You're
You have
right.
to go in because the
Well,
Yeah, they
government
don't
said
tell
that
you
you have to go
medical
to the emergency
bankruptcy
room.
is the number one form of bankruptcy in the United States. We are all one medical catastrophe away from bankruptcy in America. And that is the truth.
It's
And that
so
if you
sad.
look at the averages, the Americans don't have savings. We're not putting away money. We are living paycheck to paycheck, and one illness or one, like you're saying, exactly, one bad, your child has an accident at daycare and there you go, bankruptcy.
Yeah, you're forced to go to the ER and you're now $4,000 in the hole with
exactly.
health insurance.
Or people
With
refuse not
health
to go.
insurance.
Undiagnosed,
Yeah, and then
undiagnosed issues. I mean, think about there's rises in skincare. I'm sorry, in skin cancer because people have never been to a dermatologist. That's a perfect example. Like when you just don't you
facts.
don't go, things go untreated. It's Misha, thank you for jumping in, friend. It's always good to talk to you. I appreciate you very much.
Oh, one more point I wanted to bring up as
Sure.
well beyond healthcare is somebody put it in the comments. Another great attribute to that here is school, tertiary education. It's crazy. The cost that you have to pay to go to college. It's like you're trying to tell your nation to be educated, be better, but it's going to come at a cost that's going to probably bankrupt you for the rest of your life. So it's just crazy.
I know.
And
I appreciate you, friend. Thank you
it's
very, very, very
crazy.
much. You have a lovely
And
day. See you later.
you too.
Bye. Big Tommy, can you come up, please? I sent you an invite. I just want to have I'm a little bit confused because you said we're comparing 2 million people to 330 million people. That's the point, Tommy.
I love when they say that and it makes no sense. That's my favorite argument.
So here's some more staggering stats for you. In the United States, 4% of the world's population, 70% of pharmaceutical profits, 50 to 90% of studies funded by Big Pharma, 38% of 12 to 19-year-olds that are pre-diabetic, 7% of adults that are metabolically healthy, only 7% of adults that are metabolically healthy, 50% drop in sperm count in the last 40 years, the most pandemic deaths per capita, the most chronic disease per capita, the most autoimmune conditions per capita, the shortest lifespan per capita. And yet this sick care system still has the audacity to tell us to sit down and shut up. Yeah, no, not going to do that.
Yeah, the fact that people try to make the argument that American healthcare works, just all you have to do is look up data. It does not work.
Speaking
We
of an
spend
expat,
more on healthcare than other developed nations per person, and we are doing worse. It does not work. And they don't have any incentive. The only incentive in privatized healthcare is to give money to who? Shareholders, billionaires. That it's about profits. They have a fiduciary responsibility to give profits to shareholders, not to keep us alive.
That's right. And then deny claims. Hi, Liz. I know we've spoken about your health situation, so let's keep high level. But I know you're in Spain.
Yes.
And yeah, so let's briefly talk about, first of all, thank you for being here and what's on your mind.
Just kind of going off of your last caller, Spain is considered a third world country of Europe. It is technically first world, but it's had a failing economy ever since the 2008 financial crisis. They never really recovered. And then of course, COVID and inflation and everything has brought it back down. But Spain's, even though it's like a failing third world economy as part of Western Europe, we have universal health care, which is paid for by taxes. And as someone who has 2 chronic illnesses, both of which are difficult to diagnose, I have been through extensive testing and hospital stays and whatnot. And I can't even imagine how much that would have cost in the United States. And it cost me absolutely nothing. No copays, anything. And I have not had a good experience with my public health doctors because, number 1, I'm young. Number 2, I'm a woman. Number 3, I'm an immigrant. So that doesn't always, lead to the best experience. But even so, I still defend it 100%, and would never want to go back to private healthcare the way it is in the US. I also do have private health insurance in Spain, which is very, very cheap. And it doesn't have a system of like deductibles where you have to pay, up until a certain point. That doesn't exist with private insurance here.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate you jumping in and sharing your story with us as always. Be safe out there. Okay.
Thanks. Have a good one.
You can insurance premiums are so much cheaper in other countries. Like I had insurance when I was living in South America, but again, a place where I was like, oh, what's my copay? How much do I owe you? And they're like, what are you doing? That's not how medical care works here. But yeah, you can also have additional insurance, right? Universal healthcare is not about providing like every want, every need, every cosmetic thing, it's about giving like a basic type of healthcare to everyone for free, medicine for free. And then on top of that, you can have your own private insurance as well. It's not to say private insurance goes away.
That's right. Y'all, please consider supporting the gifting goal today. Please consider joining our team. Felice's pay app is above her head there. Let's go back to your list because there's a lot.
Guys, and we're almost to 150K. Let's get facts to 150K. Tapping is clapping. If you support this and you love us doing this on Mondays, let's get as many taps/claps as possible. We appreciate you guys so much.
Tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Your list, there's some things on there that, I think about accessibility for one, because we talked about clinics being closed in predominantly large metropolitan areas, urban centers. Oftentimes when decisions are made, of course, the first places they go for cuts are in marginalized communities. So it's access to healthcare. I know a lot of people who have privilege who may not realize it would say, an attempt to make an argument against access to universal health care would be say, well, they can just pick up and move, or they can just go someplace else. Well, no, that's not possible for a lot of people. We talked about life expectancy being lower. Paid family leave remains limited in the US. Think about that. This is a brief story. So when my daughter was sick, I remember having to be for inpatient stay. We were in the hospital for 4-day stretches, and this amazing ward in our local hospital that prioritized children, but it was sterile, because the Medicare system in our country is not set up to service kids. That's just the reality of it. Everybody who's been through it knows that. There were dads that very rarely did I see fathers. Yes, we are accepting requests, Lindsay. But very rarely did I see fathers, and it was just observational. So I was like the only dad. Right. It was a strange sort of phenomenon. And as I learned more, a lot of dads were like, well, I'm not given the time off. Like I can't take the time off, or I don't have family medical leave, or the stigma that men have to be the breadwinners, they have to go out there and provide. And it just became this sad state of affairs. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about it from the healthcare system. I was thinking of it more about societal stigma more than anything else, but it's part of it, right? So a lot of employers don't extend the courtesy to dads for paternity leave or for family medical leave, or there's just not enough baked in, or, if your PTO's out, you got to take it unpaid. It's all these things in our society that just don't support the betterment of our society. It becomes stigmatized. It becomes, we have to bend a knee for capitalism. We have to bend a knee for our employers, and we're literally dying as a nation unnecessarily.
I love one of the things we talk about the Democratic socialist model that goes on in Scandinavian countries. Sweden, like their model, and this is all about switching a misogynistic culture. Like you're right. Western civilization is based on white supremacy, and the other side of that coin is misogyny.
Correct.
And typically women's labor is devalued when you think of, jobs that particularly are woman dominated industry, right? That labor is devalued, right? Having children, having your body torn apart, your abdominal wall torn is worth nothing in this society. All the, taking care of children, managing a household, doing all of the things that women do, being a teacher is valued at little to nothing. Karl Marx is one of the people that discuss that. That is why Western civilization saw him as such an enemy, because he was
Right.
pointing out, why is women's labor in society valued at zero? And when men attempt to do women's labor in any way, they are devalued. And Sweden has done a lot to try to change that perception and encourage men to take part in child rearing. So I was looking this up. I'll add this to my notes and I'll send it to Chrissy so she can add it to the Discord. But Sweden has one of the most generous and progressive parental leave systems in the world. Here's some key features. Total leave, 480 days, approximately 16 months of paid parental leave per child. 390 days paid at about 80% of salary up to a ceiling, remaining 90 days paid at a lower flat rate. Father-specific benefits. 90 days reserved exclusively for each parent, called daddy months or mama months. These cannot be transferred between parents. Like they want the father to be present and take the time off. If not used by the designated parent, these days are forfeited. Flexibility. Leave can be taken anytime until child turns 8.
That's amazing.
I know. It blows my mind. Can be taken full-time, half-time, or even shorter portions. Parents can use their days simultaneously so they can be together with the child, or separately. They can combine them with part-time work. About 90% of fathers in Sweden take paternal leave. Men take about 30% of total parental leave days. Majority of fathers take at least 3 months off. And then as far as additional benefits, temporary parental leave, 120 days per year for sick children. Temporary parental leave. Right to reduce work hours by up to 25% until a child turns 8. Job protection during leave. Pension credits for time spent on parental leave. You get pension credits. And then the cultural impact, like what they want from this. I was just writing some notes on this. Normalized father involvement in childcare contributed to gender equality in the workforce. Like we talk about the gender pay gap. When we force women to leave the workforce and we demonize them for that, and then also put pressure on them and say, why aren't women having kids? How can they be so selfish? Because they're giving up their own upward mobility in an unforgiving capitalist society that they will never get back. Oh, what are these gaps in your resume? Oh, are you thinking about getting pregnant again?
That's right.
Can I trust you to work here?
That's
right? Women are devalued. At the same time, we're demanded to give up our bodies and our bodily autonomy to bear children. And Sweden has developed paternal strategies for paternal time off with children to try to lessen that load on the mothers, which I think is amazing.
We've talked about how obviously toxic masculinity and misogyny obviously is so harmful to women, but it's incredibly harmful to men as well, because men who decide to stay at home, in a two income household, the father may decide to stay home. Society minimizes that choice. They say, because the patriarch, what do you mean? You're the one that's going to the classes with your kid and your wife's working. And so our society minimizes men to do that. And so many men miss out on so many opportunities. And again, the rest of the world prioritizes a thing like the list that you just went through. That's amazing. There's absolutely no reason we can't do that here. There is no reason, with the exception of capitalism, white supremacy, misogyny, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, if we're prioritizing children right? If we are prioritizing children and the family dynamic, right? These are the things that should be the top of our list. This is how we make our country great. And so many of this points right back to universal health care again. So much of it, because we're not dependent on working in dead end jobs. Or, I mean, I literally faced having to go back to work in corporate America because I don't have the best health care. And now with the ACA on the chopping block again, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm not getting any younger, but that's just the reality. That's what we face here. You want drive innovation and entrepreneurship. Our society doesn't support it. It just doesn't. And that's really unfortunate. All right. Thank you guys. This is great. Please consider gifting Felice's pay apps there. Why is she only at 1.7? Let's go rock and roll. Good morning, Lindsay. How are you today?
Hi, I'm well.
What's on your
I
mind?
just wanted to can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. I just wanted to add on when you guys were talking about preventative services and obviously just the entire healthcare scam that we live with here in America,
Yep.
it brought a lot of kind of trauma back to me for some situations. I'm almost 40. My parents and my husband's parents both are obviously getting older and dealing with some medical issues, and the amount of times that they have been in urgent or emergent situations and actually called us and were refusing to get care because of the cost of care. It's just scary and horrifying. My mother-in-law actually fell. They weren't sure if it was a seizure or a stroke on a cruise ship. And they were calling us and they were actually trying to refuse getting taken off of the boat to go to a hospital because they did not want to pay for the care. And it's terrifying that is even a consideration that, any human would have to make. Like, I'm so scared of the financial implications of this that I'm going, just to potentially die. I don't know. What is the alternative,
My
So I
dad
just
is
wanted
the
to
same
add that.
way. I agree with
Yeah.
my dad. My father, I mean, and you know what I think Kamala Harris didn't get a lot of credit for addressing. And I don't personally have children because that's it's a personal choice. But, I know she would give speeches because I worked for the campaign. Thank you so much. She would give speeches and she would refer to people as the sandwich generation, which was this generation who is raising children and also has boomer parents who are retiring. That's the largest cross section of our workforce is rapidly retiring. So there's this group of people in America called the sandwich generation who are trying to raise children, but also take care of, their own parents who don't have, Medicare isn't covering all the healthcare costs. And it's very scary for people. They're responsible for two generations and they're sandwiched in between. And I got chills when you said that. I completely understand your
Yeah.
struggle with your parents and my
And
dad is that guy that
I was a
refuses
psychology major
healthcare.
and I learned all about the sandwich generation in a class I took like 20 years ago in geriatric psychology, like almost warning that we were going to be, because I'm kind of an elder millennial. So I'm right in that sandwich generation, which is why, again, they call us in those scenarios, right? But I mean, even worse is just that they've come to accept that vision and dental are like luxury services, and like why teeth are luxury bones, I don't understand. So like my dad is like
Dentistry.
76. He's like losing his, and I'm like, I don't
Vision,
know. I feel
hearing,
very
dental.
sandwiched and I feel it's created a lot of fear and anxiety
Yep.
at my age with the amount of things I've medically
right.
seen. It's like one of my biggest traumas with them. So
Yeah, and what's happening is the sandwich generation, they're not saving money for their own retirements, right?
Correct.
So then we're going to have a whole other generation of people that cannot, in fact, take care of themselves unless we change our healthcare model, because the sandwich generation is literally just shoestring budget, just praying another crisis does
That's
not
right.
happen.
And I don't mean for this entire conversation to be about healthcare. I mean, for me, it is an underpinning as to how we can be better as a society. So obviously, if people have other ideas about what does America need to be great, or is it even possible? But again, these conversations are important. Sorry, I had to step out. My dog got into something and It's pretty nasty.
No worries. And I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Okay.
I just, that was the one part. I agree with everything else you guys were talking about after that, related to misogyny. And anyway, thank you for listening. I just think
Thanks,
that,
Angie.
it's not just preventative services, the emergencies and
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll speak on that because I know all about this. There's many different universal healthcare models, but the reason universal healthcare is more affordable than what we do in the United States is because it's what they call a preventative healthcare model versus emergent. In America, we don't go to the doctor for 12 years and then we go and find out we're in stage 3 liver failure. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And that is highly expensive. When you move to preventative healthcare, when you have every American being screened, going to the doctor, having physicals and taking tests and colonoscopies and mammograms, healthcare, the cost of healthcare goes down. So I couldn't agree with you more. We wait in America until we're at the on death's door, and then the cost is exorbitant.
That's exactly right. Lindsay,
right. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Appreciate you. Okay.
I have other ideas though, besides healthcare, of how we do fix this.
Yeah.
Swervin', hey, I haven't talked to you in forever.
Hey, Swerve.
Good morning, all of you beautiful tiny people living in my telephone. I hope you all are doing well. Please excuse my dog. She is in front of squirrels for the first time in her 6-year life. So I apologize if you hear her in the background.
Don't worry about it. I just literally had to deal with my dog puking, so I'm totally
gotcha.
fine. No worries.
So I was here at the beginning of your live, unlike some people. I'm sorry, Felice, that was a dig at you.
She was here.
No, I know.
Just waiting for her intro.
I wanted to go back to something you were saying earlier about what would make America great. And you had your list of we are low in this, we are mid on this. And I started thinking, I said, we're also very high on the infant mortality rate. We're very high on the birth mortality rate for women unalive and on a birthing table, and things of that nature.
Child poverty.
Maternal mortality.
Maternal mortality, thank you. And child poverty, we're very high on the list. So when I think Americans have this delusion that America is great. And I'm coming at this from a veteran's perspective, having traveled the world, and, I've seen humanity at its very best, and I've seen it at its very worst. And when things are at their very worst, we can be at our very best. However, if we look at the hurricane that went through and hit North Carolina, that was a time where we should have been at our very best. But because of the GOP, we ended up being at our very worst. People were told that FEMA is going to seize your land if you apply for help. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. FEMA doesn't have the ability to seize a gumball machine, let alone an acre of land. It's just not possible. But when we talk about healthcare, as a veteran, I enjoy some of the best healthcare in the world. Last year when I got sick, my bills totaled out to $3.9 million. Now, I don't know what kind of health insurance anyone would have to carry to be able to cover that cost. I don't know how much that health insurance would cost, but when we speak of it in terms of universal health care, I was talking to a gentleman about 2 days ago in my live, and I said, okay, so you're paying $400 a month in health care. Wouldn't it be better if they raised your taxes maybe 1%? Let's say you were paying $30 a year for universal health care as opposed to the money you're paying $400 a month. Wouldn't that be better? And they just, he just had this mentality of, well, I don't want to pay for other people's stuff. I said, well, you're already paying for other people's stuff. Your tax dollars pay for my health care. Your tax dollars pay my disability. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
his increase.
It's worse than that, though. Our tax dollars pay for.
So expensive. The reason the system is so expensive is because other people are uninsured or underinsured. So, again,
It's worse than that. We pay for people's emergency room bills. Our tax dollars, we pay for uninsured people in the emergency room. That's like when we say that Medicare for all, there's cost analysis done. and cost analysis done that universal health care is cheaper. It is. We are paying for people's health care now.
That's right.
Yeah, we're
$1,000 per American on average.
we're already doing it, and I would be okay paying a little bit more in my taxes if it meant that Felice and Fax and everyone else in the chat could enjoy the same kind of health care that I enjoy. When I go to the VA, if they say, hey, Swerve, we need you to get an MRI. Okay, when do we want to schedule that? Well, you can go right down the hall there, take the elevators to the first floor, turn right, and they may be able to get you done right now.
Exactly.
You know, that's the kind of healthcare that we should all be able to enjoy. That's the kind of healthcare that our congressmen and senators and our president enjoys.
Exactly.
You all should have the exact same right. And then one more thing I want to touch on, and then I'm going to drop down.
Sure.
You know, a few weeks before the election, Elon Musk put out that statement that America is going to have to undergo hardships as we go through this transition, right? So,
Right.
one, he's got a few billion in the bank. I don't know. He could make a phone call and have Gordon Ramsay cooking his dinner tonight. Let's be real. So I don't know what hardships he's going to have to undergo. But I tried going back into the Wayback Machine. And the first time I was able to vote in person, because I was out of country in the 90s, just so happens the first time I was able to vote in person was during Bill Clinton's second run, right? I was able to actually go and vote in person. And that was, I said hardships. Okay, so we go from Bill Clinton to Bush Jr. America wasn't under any hardships. Then we go from Bush, we had unfortunately 9/11. We had the Katrina disaster. They watched Katrina happen like it was some AMC movie of the week. Then the housing market busted. And so America at that point was already under hardship. Here comes President Obama, cleans all that up, 76 months of straight job growth, hands it over to Donald Trump, right? No hardship. Then here comes Trump, who completely mismanaged the pandemic, had hemorrhaged 192,000 jobs before the pandemic broke loose. 8 or 9 oil refineries were lost under his watch. And then he helped to facilitate the sale of the largest oil refinery in his country to Saudi Arabia. So when he hands it over to President Biden, America once again is already under hardships. Now I'm trying to think, okay, our economy has bounced back. We had the soft landing, which is what the Fed wanted, and we are starting to lower interest rates. Egg prices aren't going to come down anytime soon because I don't know if you all are aware or not, but we just had to, here in the state of Ohio where I live, we just had to shut down 2 chicken farms because of avian flu. And they actually found, they did some blood tests on some of the cows, and they found the avian flu has now jumped into bovines.
Great.
So that in and of itself is dangerous, okay?
Yeah.
But that aside, President Biden is getting ready to hand over another country that's stable. We have good job growth. I think the last jobs report was $220,000. So I guess my question to you both, what hardships is America going to have to go through as we transition from the Biden presidency to the next Trump presidency? Because I still can't think of a single one. So I would love to hear your perspectives on it. And I'm going to go ahead and drop myself down. And because I got to go. Actually, I'm off to the VA here in about 40 minutes. So it was great talking to you. As always, Fax, I haven't talked to you in a while. Felice, I haven't talked with you in a while, but I'm always listening. I love listening to you too. Because I know I'm going to learn something. And I just appreciate you both for what you do. And please don't ever stop doing it.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Followed you. I don't think I followed this account. So I followed you.
Yeah, this is my backup. My other account got nannered. So, yeah.
It's a badge of honor these days. I appreciate you, buddy.
It is. My main account, I am suffering ban number 171 of the 5 years that I've been on TikTok. So I wear it as a badge of courage and honor.
You should.
So
thank you, my friend. Be safe out there.
I love you guys and girls. And if I could hear your perspective on that, I would love to hear it. Okay.
Gotcha, buddy. See you later.
Enjoy the rest. Have a great show. And I love you guys and girls. And I'll see you soon.
See you, bud. I I get his point. I think I
We're
also
almost to 200K, guys. Keep tapping the screen. Tapping is clapping. You guys are doing an amazing job this morning. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I always throw the caveat out there that it's always marginalized groups in general that always suffer. That's just nothing new. I think I think what's going to happen now. I mean, based on all indicators, we obviously don't know. No one has a crystal ball, but when you run on lowering prices, when you tell your base that you're going to end inflation and lower prices, and then you come out on an interview after you win the election, after you convince them based on that lie that was going to happen, and then say, yeah, well, lowering prices is hard. It may not happen. Elon Musk saying, yeah, it's going to be very difficult for a while. So it's going to get really bad. We don't have the labor force now. And then they want to mass deport tens of millions of people potentially to make it worse. So it's going to get harsh. To Swerve's point, this is self-inflicted. You could have looked at the Biden economy at the macro level. And I do think that the Democrats did not address specifically enough kitchen table politics. I don't think that they leaned in enough on the reality that at the micro level things were expensive. I think it was a bit of a miss. I think in hindsight they could have messaged a little bit better around that. But by all macro indicators, every single macro indicator out there, there's not a country in the world that would not want the U.S. economy right now. There's not one. So it's going to get hard.
I mean, I see it a little. I see both things. Yeah, like people just misunderstood what Biden was saying, but also didn't want to hear it. Like you have to understand, MAGA is in cognitive dissonance. That's the baseline. Otherwise, you could hear what Joe Biden was saying. He never said things were perfect, but what was happening, and is the reality, like you're saying, we're now in a position where we recovered the best from COVID in the G7, right? When a crisis happens, a pandemic that no one can control, to a certain degree, things are going to get bad. But it wasn't just because of that, right? Like prior to the pandemic, Donald Trump was mismanaging the budget. He was deregulating the country, right? He was allowing mergers to happen, antitrust mergers to happen that should never have happened. And as a result of that, right, inflation goes up. I think that people need to understand the global economy and the drivers of inflation. And first and foremost, I don't know if it matters to people in cognitive dissonance. I watch every day Donald Trump be proved to have lied about something, and then MAGA just say, oh, I don't care. They just explain it away. But if it matters to you, Donald Trump's not going to be able to deliver on his promises. Everything he said he was going to do, if he does in fact deport, let's say Trump says it's up to 21 billion. I've heard him say it's 13 million. If he deports that cross section of our workforce, it will hurt our economy, right? Inflation will go up.
Yeah,
it will hurt the American people specifically. It will hasten our Social Security being insolvent, right? Undocumented immigrants, 13 million people are paying into Social Security and Medicare and never taking it back out again. There's many ways that his mass deportation plan will hurt our economy. There are infinite ways that tariffs will. Donald Trump, the first thing on the agenda are tax cuts for the rich. And for corporations. That's how he got started. We are watching a mirror image that just seems to be amplified. It's going to be worse this time, right? He cut taxes and he was spending wildly. And I am not talking about the pandemic. You can look it up on your own. Trump spent wildly while bringing in less tax revenue. He mismanaged the United States economy and the United States budget, period. When they say they're planning on defunding the IRS, they tried, and the MAGA believed them. They said they're going to go after poor single mothers and audit them. No, they weren't. They were going to go out. They were going to get forensic accountants to do high level forensic audits of the 1% to get them to pay their taxes. And that money would have benefited us. Now they're planning on starving the IRS, what they're doing to the Department of Education. You know what that means? We bring in less tax revenue.
Exactly.
They are mismanaging the U.S. budget. I see it. And in order to cut their taxes, they're saying, hey, we'll just have Americans not only pay their taxes at the end of the year, we'll tack on more at the cash register. That's a punishment for Americans directly.
Speaking of punishment, Trump.
I see there's any number of ways he's going to fail at this.
He wants to punish. I wrote this down. He wants to punish Mexico for illegal immigration by making Americans pay more for Mexican products because that's how stupid works.
It's like, exactly. It doesn't even make sense. And he keeps dancing around it as if one day it's all going to make sense.
Yeah, again, Trump wants to punish Mexico for illegal immigration by making Americans pay more for Mexican products because that's how
he's punishing Americans for what he says Mexico did, which they didn't do.
Exactly. Good morning, Rabbit Hole. How are you? It's been a minute.
Hey, good morning, guys. Lots of things. So, like, within the last 4 minutes, there's breaking from Samsung News about Assad pretty much giving his proof of life with a bullshit freaking statement. Oh, well, I didn't leave until like the last minute, blah, blah, blah. Anyways. And then I just heard from Aaron Parnas about is a ProPublica piece. I think it was put out 3 days ago, how United Healthcare is trying to circumvent applied behavioral analysis for autistic children.
Yeah, we covered this on Friday on my live. Yeah, we talked about this on Friday on my live. Yeah, that's a ProPublica article that came out on Friday. I can find, if you want to watch the replay on YouTube from my live, Fax was on my live on Friday and we covered it. It's called United Healthcare is Limiting Access to Critical Treatment for Kids with Autism. And you don't have to read ProPublica articles. They're quite long. You can listen.
Listen to them, which are great.
Oh, I can't do audibles. Okay, what's your YouTube? Well, no, I was bringing that up.
Not specifically talking. I was talking to people in the audience. You could do whatever you want.
See, what happened was, well, no, I bring it up to bring this up because you guys have a far better reach than I do. If we could do like a summit to identify who's got the open market deadlines, because I want to say healthcare.gov has a deadline for January 15th for a February 1 coverage, because freaking United's doing all this fucking honky freaking shit. Make them pay with their fucking their numbers, but get better people coverage if possible.
Well,
that's the only thing I can think of to combat the bullshit that they're doing. They're like, oh, well, we're in mourning, and yet they're still doing all this shady shit.
It's a bit easier said than done. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, that ProPublica piece is disturbing. This is part of the response.
I put the title in the chat for you guys if anyone wants to copy it and look it up.
Thank you so much.
I got it.
I mean, again, sort of, the healthcare system obviously is dominating a lot of our conversations these days, and I've been talking about it forever. I'm glad other people are talking about it now. I mean, again, this is the apathy. Part of the push from the healthcare companies and the machine in general is that, like I said, claim denial is part of their P&L. The expectation is that the 80 to 90% of people, when denied a claim, won't pursue it any further. So that's why it becomes this issue, right? So that's apathy. But it's by design. They don't feel like the American electorate, those that are insured by these companies, are smart enough or willing enough to go through it. They look at the chaos in people's lives. They know they won't pursue. They know they won't pursue it legally because people don't have the money. So again.
Or just exhaustion inside capitalism. Like when I always say 4 years ago, I almost died and I had United Healthcare and I learned all about their pre-authorization system and their automatic denials and how you have to appeal them. And thank God, because I was dying. So I could spend 6 hours on hold. You know what I mean? Sure. Who that's trying to survive in capitalism has 6 hours to wait on hold and argue with people and then call another company and get a doctor to write this. And there's no way, if you want to have a job and take care of your children, to dispute these things. I just happened to be dying. So I had all the time in the world.
Oh my God, that hits hard. I just happened to be dying.
Thank you for jumping in today, friend. I appreciate you very much.
Y'all have a great one.
You too. See you later. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's start talking about some other things. And again, the box is open, friends. We'd like to have conversations with everybody. I'd be curious.
Almost at 200. Sorry.
Almost there. That's okay. I've seen some ops in the chat saying that, we can't do it. You don't want to pay for it. So again, I'd like to have this conversation. So for MAGA, if you're listening, If you can give me if you can give me an economic reason and or social reason against universal health care, I will delete my account on the spot. So that's the challenge to you. So let's bring up Leslie, and then we can sort of maybe have some other conversations about other things on your mind. So get your brain spinning, guys. What does America need to be great? What do we need? That was a nice hat. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, I just wanted to share one story from my own personal file about the intersection regarding maternal health care and health care coverage, because my husband was active duty military when we had our children. And after our son was born, I was carrying him. The dogs got out. I tripped and fell, and I made sure that the baby didn't fall, but I got a hard landing on my knees. And days later, my husband's like, "Oh my gosh, your legs look terrible." And I said, "Oh, that's from when I fell." And he goes, No, that's something else. You need to go to the doctor." And I said, "It's ridiculous to go to the doctor for bruises on my legs when I had a fall." And he said, "I am in the military optioning portions of my soul to make sure that we have coverage. You're going to the doctor." As it turns out, I was diagnosed with a strange systemic disorder called sarcoidosis that can do weird things all over your body.
Know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
They thought I had neurosarcoidosis when I was dying in the hospital, and it turned out I didn't. And then I had to learn what that was. Man, I feel for you.
And it was very lucky that I got the diagnosis when I did, because I didn't have long-term effects from it. When I went to my OBGYN for my next follow-up and I told him what happened, he was like, he just shrugged and said, "That makes sense." I went, "What?" He told me the things that your body goes through when you are carrying a child pretty much throws everything up in the air, and you never know how it's going to land. So this idea about mandating childbirth without universal health care is absolutely asinine. And this
The most dangerous time in a woman's life is when she's pregnant.
One example, and afterwards, because your body in some ways will try and protect itself and the fetus at all costs. But once you've given birth, you are just Humpty Dumpty putting the pieces back together. And we need healthcare coverage for that. So that's what I wanted to share today. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thanks, Leslie. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's so true. The most dangerous time in a woman's life. And also, let me just say, I do the broadcast on Tuesdays with an actual doctor. She is amazing. If you don't know, her handle is In Bed with Danielle and Potty Mouth Pollyanna Mandy. And awesome. The broadcast, just taking back the word broad, but we focus on how conservative policies and the Trump administration are hurting women. That's at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. And we cover all of these issues. So if you're interested in hearing more about the maternal mortality rate, hearing a doctor who is an absolute genius actually analyze all this stuff, you have to meet Danielle. She is my spirit animal.
One thing that I would love to include in this conversation about trying to make our society better I would say free public college. I think that any or state schools, public education, not private, but free public education, higher education. There's no reason why, because a lot of this, to me, again, the argument in opposition would be, I don't want to pay for it. Well, the reason that you don't want to pay for it is because you've been told it's socialism or that it's bad. I think that this is another argument for taxing the rich. And part of me being a progressive, the rest of the world laughs at us, American progressives, because you guys are fighting over universal health care and education. Tax the rich. I don't want 1 or 2 incremental points on an increase in corporate taxes. I want 45, 50%. I want the top marginalized tax rate to be 90%. There is no more. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. All these things that we talk about in our nation, like I want to stand firmly and proudly and be able to look back and say, we have the best public education system in the world. And we did that because there were people that were courageous in government, and the society stood up and said, no more. The rich is going to pay their fair share. Elon Musk is worth $500 billion. He could give $1 billion to every American and still have $130 billion worth of wealth.
Just stop. You're making me ill. Wait, let me give you some stats because I looked up some stats too on like I was trying to find because I totally agree with you. I have some bullet point ideas of like what we need to do to make America great again. And one is certainly subsidizing university in America.
Absolutely.
Here,
Yeah,
let me
hold on, Jules. So Jules, yeah. So Elon Musk could give every American $1 billion and still have $130 billion in wealth.
Yeah, as of today.
There you go.
It's so quite disturbing.
Ahead,
college graduates, because that's what we're trying to do, right? The point of education, the reason we educate children in America, right, and we're not China. We're not sending people into factories, right? We don't have a slave labor manufacturing economy, right? We are all about higher education and captains of industry. So college graduates earn on average of $1 million more over their lifetime compared to just high school graduates. Each $1 invested in higher education generates approximately $3.80 in tax revenue. Do you understand what I'm saying here? We are making more money in tax revenue off college graduates. For each $1 the United States invests in higher education, that generates approximately $3.80 in tax revenue. That's called a good investment.
Yeah.
States with higher percentages of college graduates have stronger economic growth and higher median incomes. Right? I mean, you can look at the numbers in many different ways, but there's a reason that in the developed world outside of America, where it's education has become for profit, which is ridiculous, they subsidize university. The average public university tuition has increased 175% in the past 20 years. Average student debt upon graduation at this point is $28,950.
I'm sorry, I meant $1 million per person, not $1 billion. My apologies. I meant $1 million per person, but still. Go ahead.
43 million Americans hold student debt totaling 1.75 trillion. 40% of students who drop out cite financial reasons. Only 13% of students from the bottom quarter income families graduate college. 13%. This goes back to equality in this country. 62% of students from top quarter income families graduate college, right? Do we want education to become a thing? Like I just gave you the stats about college graduates on average earn over $1 million more over their lifetime. Right. 13% of families from the bottom quarter of students graduate college, 62% from the top quarter. First generation college graduates earn 27% more than their parents on average. Let's say international comparisons I wrote down. Germany, Norway, Finland, and Sweden provide free or nearly free university education. These countries have higher social mobility rates than the U.S. U.S. students pay the highest average tuition among OECD countries.
See, here's the hypocrisy from the right. They talk about how we shouldn't be sending our money overseas. We shouldn't be supporting our allies. So you might have been in the live with me, but I think it was last week we had this conversation about how okay, here's the deal. Let's become truly isolationists, right? Let's stop spending any money abroad. Let's stop supporting our allies. Let's literally build a wall around the whole country, a big dome. No money goes out. Okay, cool. Then can we have universal health care? Nope. Don't want to have it. So it's the lie that it's about our spending. It's about the prioritization of our spending, right? So again, it was $1 million per citizen. He would still have billions of dollars left. Sorry on my math there. It's early. To your point though, it's first of all, it's the for-profit, university system. I mean, Harvard, I was just reading about this. One of my daughter's friends got into Harvard. They've got an endowment so big that for the next 50 years, they could pay for the tuition for every incoming student. The next 50 years.
The Harvard endowment is terrifying. I know. I mean,
crazy. I mean, obviously, higher education, I believe in it. It's somebody with an MBA. I support it, but it's not something that's accessible for everyone. So let's make it accessible. That's the point. Let's make it accessible. Let's make public education, higher education free. state funded. It gets worse than some of the data that you just shared when they talk about kids who end up in the foster care system, right? I think it's 2%, 3% graduate high school in some cases. And it's even less than that for those that want to continue on to get their degree in another area. This is part of trying to flip the script a little bit here. Hey, Rosie.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent conversation.
Thank you.
I just had two things.
Please.
On education, I wish also we would have a better focus on trade skills. We used to have a technical high school here in Omaha, and you could graduate and you were a fully certified welder. You were a diesel mechanic. You were you were making good money. Well, we need other trades like that in the high school level where you would maybe be able to graduate and you'd have at least your CNA, or you'd have, you'd be a dental assistant, you'd be a student teacher, something like that. In trades where we need a lot of help. And I mean, I had a friend's son. Well, he was not. He was a good kid. He just didn't have good grades. He just wasn't interested in school. He went into welding, got his certificates in that, and then he went up to Duluth, Minnesota, and got into underwater welding in the shipping yards. His first year doing that, he was making six figures. So, I mean, the trades are portable. They go anywhere, and they should be a big focus, because just shoving everyone into college blindly is not, I don't think, there are some kids that don't do well in college.
Totally agree. I completely agree. I think. Let me rephrase that to your point, Rosie. I think it's access to higher education,
Yes.
whatever that might be,
Or
whatever that
post
might be.
high school education, some type of something like that.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
because
I can't get a plumber. I need a plumber, and I can't get one.
No, they're hard to find.
I'm told like March.
Yeah, my
So
electrician
I'll do it myself, and I'll
was-
screw it up. But
my
that's how it
electrician
works.
was trained by the Navy. And but that's and there's, I don't know, it seems like people sort of shame the trades, and it's like, I have seen some of the smartest people ever in the trades.
Heck yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't do well in a classroom, but you do really well, taking your airplane apart and putting it back together.
Damn straight.
And I started working in national healthcare on that campaign in about 1990, because I'm old. And we spend approximately, just Americans, I'm not talking about the government, $4 trillion a year.
Approaching $6 trillion
Yeah.
by 2027.
But I mean, that's just out of our pocket. Every American spends something like $13,000 a year on healthcare.
Mhm.
And that's just an average. And if we can afford that, we absolutely can afford national health care. And that's one of the things I will be forever angry at Biden about, because one of the big things I voted on was Medicare for all. I mean, at least let us get that. Because I've said to people, what would you do? What would you do with your life? What would you do with your career if you didn't have your health care tied to your job?
Exactly.
And it's usually something radically different. People will
Exactly.
stay in dead-end jobs where they absolutely hate it because they've got to have health care for their family, for themselves, because they've got a pre-existing condition, because they've got a disability. And it's like,
Right.
you shouldn't have a miserable population doing that.
People take jobs to get enough coverage to cover
Yes.
childcare.
Uh-huh.
Like, think about that model, right?
Mhm.
Because they're like, I need benefits, I got to have insurance, and I need childcare so I can get insurance. That's
Uh-huh.
crazy. That's crazy.
Mhm. It's just, it makes no sense
No,
that we are this vastly wealthy nation. We're the only industrialized nation on the planet that does not have national health care.
correct. Number one in cost, 42nd in outcome.
Mm-hmm. And we spend so much money on it, and we have such crappy coverage. I am now, I own my own business just like you, and I'm getting my insurance through the exchange because I no longer work full time for the Omaha Public School District. I work part time.
Mhm.
So it's up to me now.
Yep.
And that's
Scary.
yet another stressful thing.
Yeah,
So
you're right. I mean, education for me, no doubt about it. I want the world to look at the American public education system with envy. To say,
Yeah.
man, they figured it out. They are prioritizing. They're paying their teachers. School districts across the country are competing for teachers. Federal government subsidizes the wages of teachers so that it becomes a job that people want to go into. The lack of respect that the teaching profession is shown in our society disgusts me. After being raised by a teacher and being surrounded by teachers. I mean,
exactly.
Again,
I didn't know you were raised by a teacher. That explains a lot.
So was I.
I was a teacher. So was I actually, and I was a teacher. I just want to add to this conversation because I just want to, just as a multiracial person, I want people to understand, when did college stop being free? It was around the late 60s, mid to late 60s, the debate started about, well, all of a sudden conservatives didn't want to pay for education anymore. Why was that? The Civil Rights Act was passed, right? And subsidizing upward mobility for brown and black people in this country became something that white people in the South, conservatives in the South no longer wanted to do. That is the truth. And when they stopped paying for education, they also started, then the 70s came and they started moving away, right? They decided, hey, we're not paying. Civil Rights Act passed. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. CRT would say not. That they started saying, we're not paying for everyone's education, right? And they started moving away from that. And then there was this huge push, right, of we're only valuing 4-year degrees at universities, right? Well, people in the lower socioeconomic statuses couldn't get those degrees. It was a way of separating society and setting society on two paths. They stopped investing in, like, exactly what you're saying, vocational and technical schools. That was an active push in the 70s and the 80s, and to place value on 4-year university degrees. And if you wanted one and you didn't have money, what did you have to do? Go into debt.
Yeah. And I was born in 66. And when I was,
I'm with you, sister.
Growing up in the 70s, my parents had gotten some of those Gerber life insurance policies for me and my brother. So they were worth about $2,000.
Yeah.
And my mom always said, well, we got them for you, so when you go to college, you can cash them out, and that's the money you'll need for college. Because it cost about $2,000 to go through the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and get a degree then. It cost about $2,000. And I was like, oh, gracious. When I actually was in college, it was like, well, this might pay for books, So there was no financial assistance that I could get at all when I entered college.
And then now that we talked about this earlier, the DOE, the disbanding or the elimination of the DOE, which means less access to people who need government money to help go to college, all that goes away. I mean, I'm an advocate. I've said this 10 toes down. I'll say it again. I mean, overspend on public education. Overspend.
But they don't want to.
I know.
Someone mentioned this. I think it was Toodle in the comments, which was it started, with a man named Roger Freeman, who also worked for Nixon, who said, and they talked about the proletariat, which if you've read 1984, and they said the dangers of an educated middle and lower class is something we cannot abide in America, right? And that's when college debt was invented, essentially. If we drive them into debt, if they're so concerned with their survival, maybe that will deter them from college, or will keep them under control in a better way. And that's what we're seeing. If you ask the average person, like MAGA, what does the Department of Education do? They don't have, I've never had someone get it right. Not once. They think they're like, develops curriculum, and we don't want people learning about, the trans community. No, they don't, right? Actually, who's benefiting from the Department of Education by and large? White women. right?
Definitely.
Title IX, white women who
Affirmative
voted
action.
against their own self-interest. Buy for your educational funding, white women. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the truth. This is another push to keep the proletariat, the middle and lower class, uneducated, compliant, and concerned only with their survival. This already happened in the 60s, right? There was a man named Roger Freeman who said, we can't let people get too educated. They're going to figure out what's going on. They're going to figure out who's taking all their money.
Yeah,
And it's happening again.
exactly.
Thank you, Rosie. I
Well,
appreciate
thanks
it
for
very
having
much.
me up. You
You're
guys are doing a
amazing.
great job. Have a wonderful day.
Big
Thank you, you too.
fan.
See you later.
All right, bye, hon.
It's a really good point. Like trade schools, vocational. I mean, we live in a different, we live in a different society now. Obviously, I think the value. There's been studies recently where the ROI on a 4-year degree is not what it once was, just because there's so many other industries, whether it be a streamer or whether it be whatever it might be. But it's access, and the people who always are denied access to everything are marginalized communities, right? But now you're seeing that same denial of access in white communities, right? Because of the cost of everything. So they're being harmed as well because they continually vote not against their best interests. It's the preservation of their whiteness. That's where I go with this whole debate now. It's the preservation of where they are on the social ladder.
Well, and and the peak of vocational education, which I cannot agree with more. Our senator, who's an astronaut, just saying, some of us have senators who've been in space. His name's Mark Kelly. One of the reasons he was elected and will continue to be elected in Arizona, even though it's a Republican, I would say mainly conservative state, is because that's what he said. He said, hey, when I was growing up, we had vocations. Not everyone had to go to college. There was a different path in America to upward mobility. And I'm going to bring corporations to America that have paths outside of 4-year university educations and being in debt for the rest of your life. And, white males were like, say what now? Aren't you an astronaut? I think we love you. And you can track it. The height of vocational education was the 60s and 70s, post-civil rights. You saw the rising of the lower class, middle class, to upward mobility. That scared people.
Yeah.
And they began to move away. Reagan, right? If you look at when they started moving away from trade schools, technical certifications, vocations, started getting rid of shop class. That was Ronald Reagan. It's about the class divide, right? Exactly. It's about saying either you go into debt trying to make it through a 4-year university or bust.
I mean, the growth of the middle class, post World War II, expansion of suburbs, the infrastructure being built in our country, schools being built required tradesmen. Right. So that was, instead of focusing on what worked as a society, we wanted to punish people again because we didn't want marginalized communities to have a voice. Rose, how are you today?
Hey, Steve. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you guys?
Fine, thank you. What's on your mind?
That's
great.
Good. I will be really quick because I'm sure you probably want to hear from Americans, but just as an Australian, really quick.
We want to hear from people who care.
Really care. I've been following you guys for a while, and I absolutely love what you do and the fact that you present facts to people still. It's something that's missing in a lot of the world these days.
Thank you. We try.
But I just thought I would weigh in as an Australian. Number one, I actually, a few years ago, got accepted into the New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts, and that was amazing. But
congratulations.
Unfortunately, thank you. But unfortunately, I only won a partial scholarship, and with the insane tuition amounting to approximately over 200,000 Australian dollars, I couldn't get in because, even though I am white, I had to leave home at 16 due to a very abusive family, and I didn't have the backing of my parents. And I definitely think even though university is still very expensive in Australia, I think in America it is absolutely insane. And I think that's something that definitely needs improving, because I think when we are educated and when we can, look at the world around us and look at that from a more intellectual and educated perspective, it allows us to have better stances on things.
mean, to that point, Rose, I think what you bring up a really, really good point. I wasn't even thinking about this. So a lot of the heat that Joe Biden, the Biden administration took for wanting to forgive student loan debt. Let's think about that, right? So predatory lending, the cost of tuition for higher education is grown exponentially. I mean, it's crazy the percentage hikes that we've seen in the last 20 to 25 years. So
Absolutely.
we have an administration that cares about that, trying to help support communities who have it the hardest to try to gain access to public education, and then gets accused of wanting to benefit society because you put more money in the hands of consumers, they spend it. So it's anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to take us to side rail that, but I think it's relevant to this conversation.
No, I completely agree with everything you just said. And I guess the second thing is, I know we don't want to talk about healthcare all night, but
that's okay. It's important.
It is, and I'm a disabled person, and I'm someone who struggles with chronic illness. And although I would so desperately have wanted to go to the New York Conservatory, and I think that would have been amazing for me, part of me is kind of glad that life interfered and I couldn't afford it, because I genuinely do not know how I would have coped as a chronically ill person in America. And, as an Australian, I'm so grateful. I've just had a hospital stint, and luckily I have private healthcare. But even so, I know that I would have been taken care of in our public hospitals. And I think that, looking at America, it's just very scary as a chronically ill person. I just cannot imagine how you guys do it. So as an Australian on the outside looking in, I really think America needs better access to education and better access to healthcare in order to, be great and step up your society as a whole, because I think access is the biggest thing that prevents every community from stepping up to that next level.
It's so sad to hear you say that. The stark reality, though.
It's so true, though. If only they wanted every community in America to step up their access. That might be the point.
As a queer woman, yeah.
I'm following you. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I've actually pretty much followed everyone that's been up here. I just didn't say it. Oh, I attempted to, but you're private.
No, that's all good. I'll accept. But I really appreciate you guys, and I'll hop off now, but all the best.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate you very much. You have a good day.
Bye.
Such a posh Australian accent. Sorry, I'm a bit of an Anglophile.
Just think about that. Like, you can't follow your dreams because sadly, you're already in a marginalized group as a queer woman with some health issues. You can't follow your dream. You get into one of the most sought after New York conservatories there is if you want to study theater arts, and you're afraid to go because you're concerned about the American healthcare system. That is just so sad.
I wanted to listen to I just wanted to read some more things. I was just doing some research.
Please.
So there's 7.3 million unfilled skilled trade jobs currently in America because we've moved away from providing that path. Like someone in the comments said HVAC is a great field to be in. I agree. I live in Arizona. You want to always
HVAC. For those of you who live in TikTok.
No, absolutely not. That's more. No, I'm talking about actually fixing air conditioning, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Right.
Yeah, like I live in Arizona. You want to always have a job. Like HVAC, 7.3 million unskilled trade jobs in America. Average age of, I find this fascinating because it speaks to what we're talking about. The height of when they were allowing people to have a path in skilled trade jobs was the 60s and 70s. The average age of a skilled trade person is 55. Starting salaries for many trades is 50 to 65,000. That exceeds many college graduate salaries. Trade school costs 1/4 of traditional college on average. Like, we need to
in colder climates. You have someone comes in and checks out your furnace or your boiler, whatever that might be. So that happens usually around October. So the technician's here for 45 minutes. I get a $300 bill.
People are saying that, there are tech schools. There are still tech schools that exist, but you just have to understand in the 60s and 70s, the proliferation of vocations versus university. It was just as available. It was, if not more so.
That's right. Hi, Double Ray. How are you? Thank you again for being a subscriber. Appreciate you.
Oh, yes. Enjoy your work so much. I love both of you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to say something, and I'm sorry, I'm autistic. I get a little nervous whenever I'm talking, but I really just wanted to say about the corporations because I work for a corporation and I have for almost 20 years, and I'm a little bit I am privileged to see all of the stuff that I'm not supposed to talk about, but I'm just saying that corporations will not share their wealth unless they are made to. They have to be taxed. It will not happen otherwise.
Preach.
That is my opinion, but I also see a lot, and I really believe that that is true.
I agree. Completely agree. So how do we do it?
God, I think we have to force them. I think we have to tax them. We have to make sure that it's incentivized for them to share wealth with the people that are at the bottom. Because what I see is that they give bonuses to really high up people in the corporation that are making a lot of money, and those bonuses are like more than what the people who are under me get in a year, and that upsets me so much.
Yeah.
I can't tell you why I struggle when we come to our fiscal year end every year. It I have a lot of dysregulation every time I come around to this time of year, but like it's and there's nothing I can do because like, you know,
You're in the machine.
I completely
I'm just a cog.
understand. I'm neurodivergent. Like I have CPTSD and I've been diagnosed with PTSD as well. And this is the worst time of year for it. It's like a lot of harsh reality is hitting you and it's very
Yeah.
and I also like, I think you sound very similar to me in that I see the world in patterns. So you could see how all this is connecting and you see it very clearly in your head. And sometimes it's harder to communicate that. And that can be super frustrating. So like, yeah, I
Yes.
completely
Thank you so
relate to
much.
you. I understand. Believe me. It's like, if only I could get this pattern out of my mind and into other people's, everything would be fine.
For real, yeah. But I just wanted to share that my
you, Ray.
perspective. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate you. See you later. Appreciate you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Guys, would
Charles.
everyone share the live with 5 people? If you don't have anyone to share it with, just hit the copy link button. That counts as well. Keep tapping the screen. Let's see if we can get some more engagement in here. Sorry, Steve. I'm just going to be your hype girl.
Do it.
Today. We're almost to 300K. Let's get to 300K. You guys, it's early, but you guys are doing an amazing job. Tapping is clapping. I really enjoy this space. It's safe. It's supportive, like people have a voice, and Steve should be rewarded for creating it.
Thank you for saying that. Feelings mutual. I do think, I mean, I'm glad those two things are at the top of my list when we talks about what do we need to make our country better. It's education, healthcare. I think those things solve so many problems, quite frankly. You know, who would not want their society to be smarter? Evangelical Christians don't, because then they can continue to convince people that the
grift.
Exactly. In both cases, I mean, it's just the reality, right? Oh, I got to find this other meme. I'm big on memes today because I found some really good ones.
Oh yeah, you got to keep the masses dumb. That is what religion is about, controlling the masses, right? Yeah. And you can't let people look what happened in the age of enlightenment. All of a sudden people were like, hey, I don't think the sun is orbiting around the earth. Yeah, that was the beginning of the end for the Catholic Church.
Here's a meme. So then Jesus said unto the sick, you better have insurance. Then Jesus said unto the stranger, are you here legally? Then Jesus said unto the hungry, my taxes better not be paying for these loaves of bread and fishes.
Jesus said to the hungry, personal responsibility, okay? Personal responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not talking about real Christians. I'm talking about Republican, conservative Christians. You know what I'm saying? There are real Christians who follow the New Testament. I support freedom of religion. I'm just talking about the bastardization of religion and what it's being used for, which is to control the masses, control women, you know, and other things of that nature.
Well said. Well said. Good morning, friend. How are you?
Good, friend. How are you?
Fine, thank you. What's on your mind today?
Good morning, Felice. This is my first time with you. Love your work.
Thank you so much.
So I just want to jump on real quick. Right now, the DNC is going to vote on a new leadership role, like who's going to lead the DNC. And I think, it's a long shot, but I've already
Felice.
Ben Wickler.
Yeah, but they're pushing out the progressives, and I love my Clinton, I love my Obama, I love my Bidens, but we've got to get more progressive in the DNC. If we can all just flood the DNC with letters and emails expressing this is the way that your party wants to go. I mean, universal health care, and name them, universal health care, more education, civil rights, protecting the minorities, protecting the LGBTQIA. We have to get our voices out there, because otherwise, if they don't know what we want, they're just going to continue with the old DNC ways. And I want a new DNC party that is more, getting social influencers more funded, getting more, communities funded, get all that we want, that we talk about on these lives all the time. Let's flood the DNC with emails and letters and let them know that this is the direction that we want to go. That's all I want to say.
I appreciate that. The thing is, they know that. The problem is that they're taking money from the same corporate donor class that the Republicans are. So our country's moderate. Our country is center right for the most part. So again, I said this earlier, the world laughs at us when we talk about being progressive in America, because progressivism in our country is public education being overfunded in healthcare. People are like, what are you fucking talking about?
Well, and I shared my healthcare story the other day with you. I have health insurance, but I don't have health insurance.
Right.
I make sure that I have my meds every month, but I wish it would.
I got you.
I'm never going to stop flooding my Democrat representatives, my Republican representatives within DNC. It's the only way that I can still cling on to the hope.
I appreciate you saying that. Thanks for being here as always.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You too. See you later.
I saw someone in the comments say, keep moving left and keep losing elections. I think it's ridiculous. Like, a progressive policy is universal health care for all, which, by the way, there are just as many moderate right leaning capitalistic countries that have universal health care. It's sad in this country that the right to health care, we have, like, MAGA has been so indoctrinated into believing they don't deserve healthcare, when every other country in the developed world has healthcare. It pays for itself. They have better outcomes, and it makes their workforce more healthy. Like, we need to scream from it's not even a progressive issue. It's a human right for us and our children to go to healthcare. If you want us to be a slave labor workforce, then let us go to the doctor so we can be healthy, so we can work ourselves to death for you. Like, it's ridiculous. It's not a progressive issue. We need universal healthcare. And I think if the Democratic Party does not start putting up candidates who say that, right? And think about it. Trump campaigned on a pack of lies that aren't going to come to fruition.
Exactly.
Right? Like, oh, no tax on overtime. He just had one of his federal judges in Texas strike down the Biden's mandate to provide overtime for people making less than $55,000. Trump himself says he hates paying overtime, but they believed a pack of lies. I don't know if universal healthcare can come to fruition, but we have to normalize it in this country. Republicans should campaign on it. Mitt Romney's an example of Republicans that brought it to a state. He brought it to Massachusetts. Every developed country in the world has universal health care, but us. You are being lied to so people can profit off of us, right? Our healthcare industry is for profit, so billionaires can make money off of us slowly unaliving. Our life expectancy rate is low. That's what this live is about. Our healthcare system is broken. It's not progressive or a leftist ideology to say, hey, everyone else in the world that's participating in capitalism can go to the doctor for free. Maybe we should be able to.
To your point, it's the normalization, right? So, because Bernie's been running on, Medicare for all, universal health care since he was a mayor of Burlington, 35 years ago. I worked on two of his campaigns, one to get him reelected as mayor and one his first run for the House. He's been talking about the same model, and he used to be labeled extreme. That's part of the problem, right? It's the identification of something that would benefit the entire society labeled as extreme. And the
by
right
rich capitalists.
Exactly. The right has been able to run on that for years, calling it socialism. It's, it's the front door to communism, although the right calls us fascist, Marxists, communists, and socialists. So I don't know if they can define any of them, but they think
doesn't know what one. Most of those are ideologically opposed. So not one of those things can exist at the same time as the other.
Right, but you bring up a really, really good point, right? It's the normalization of people referring to universal health care as extreme, right?
Imagine that. And imagine that you're being lied to. Republican MAGA carries water for billionaires. There are 15 billionaires Trump appointed to in the White House. They have the wealth of 169 countries. Every other country in the developed world has universal health care. And what is the reason we don't? You can say personal responsibility. I don't want to pay for it. There's cost analysis. It pays for itself. We're paying for people, uninsured people in the emergency room now today. Our tax dollars are. We do. It's happening. It's true. And you're being told, oh, you don't want to pay for other people. The numbers don't make sense, so that people can profit. Shareholders can profit off us slowly dying, our life expectancy going down, our maternal mortality rates going up, preterm birth rates going up, infant mortality going up. These are facts.
The reason, one of the main contributing factors as to the cost of our healthcare is because we pay to cover the uninsured. We pay to cover emergency room visits for people who don't have insurance. And that goes away. But that makes too much sense, Felice. It's just logic. Maven, good morning. How are you today?
I am fabulous. How are y'all?
Fine, thank you.
So great to see you. Well, I've been listening for a while, and I'm not sure. I listen all the time, but this morning I've been listening. So a couple things I want to talk about: healthcare and education. First and foremost, I'm a small business owner myself. I have 22 employees. And in 2021, in 2020, we raised, even for part-time, we went to $15 an hour for everybody. We had been at 12 for some of our, staff, like part-time, and we raised that to 15. But
good for you.
And then we've raised it $1 a year since then, because I believe wholeheartedly that we need now I think it should be a $25 minimum wage, but 4 years ago it was we need to be at least at a $15 minimum wage. So I need to put my money where my mouth is, literally, right? So, and then in 2021, we went ahead and we paid, instead of contributing 50% to our employees' healthcare coverage, my husband and I decided to contribute 100%. We have 9 of our of our employees that are on our health insurance, because of laws, because I have independent contractors, and because of the way the laws are written, my independent contractors, they don't want to be employees because of their own tax, advantages or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't set them up on our health insurance. So what I did was I found a concierge doctor that they can pay monthly, like $75 a month. Shocking, right? And they have access to a hospitalist that does basically private concierge healthcare for my independent contractors. And then they do all their blood work through LabCorp and things like that to try and get that, to do that cheaper. The issue for them is obviously if they need MRIs, CAT scans and things like that. So we, as those of us who are small business owners who actually give a crap about our employees, who actually want to make a difference, because healthy employees help me, right? Why am I able to sit home on my couch right now with my dogs and listen to TikTok live and have this conversation with you? Is because my employees are compensated, my employees are healthy, and they're happy, and they take care of my business. And that's why I have the time to speak at school board meetings. That's why I have the time to participate in local politics, because I choose to take one less vacation a year so that I can give my employees benefits that, these really wealthy corporations just don't do, and they don't want to do because they want to pocket that money. But one of the things I don't know if this has been ever brought up or in the conversation of what we talk about the military and education, the reason why we will never go back to free, I believe wholeheartedly we need state institutions, community colleges need to be completely free. State institutions need to be like very nominal, maybe a couple $1,000s a semester, for a state institution. Private institutions, private colleges, listen, charge whatever you want. If you're a private college education, whatever, do whatever you want, charge whatever you want, and let the privileged people who have the money do it. But state funded in education institutions should be, if not free, very, very inexpensive.
Preach.
And so, but the reason why we will never do that, where I live in where the largest Navy base in the world is. And and so the military, how will we recruit the people that we want to just throw away to war? How will we recruit?
Oh yeah, the poverty to military pipeline. That's another piece of it. That's why vocation, and that's also goes to like the Roger Freeman saying the proletariat needs to stay uneducated. The middle and lower classes need to stay uneducated. It wasn't until I went to university and got a degree in history and started understanding American imperialism, our forward military positions in the world, and started understanding what the American military was doing around the world, that you start seeing, I couldn't be a part of that. And they don't want people to, and that's why you have to make it to a 4-year college to be for it to be explained to you.
Listen, I was a child bride. I was forced to get married and have a baby because I got pregnant at 16. The boyfriend was in the military. Why was he in the military? Because he had gotten into trouble as a poor white kid outside the skirts of Philadelphia, like in the Camden area of New Jersey. And he had to go in the military because it was either basically you're going to go to jail, or we don't have money for college because his dad was like a 3M plant worker. His mom worked just a small part-time job. And so he went in the military because of the poverty and because he was getting himself into trouble. And so he was like, I guess I could get some education out of it. Now, there are so many people. I mean, I see young people, my business, I have a tattoo studio, a pretty large tattoo studio in the area, see a lot of military, see a lot of young people coming through. And that is their story. So many of these young enlisted people who are just, to the government, they are just collateral damage in what we do in this world. They don't care about these enlisted folks, but they entice them with not just free military for them or free education for them, but hey, you can give this to your kids. You could give this to your wife, right? So it's not even necessarily about educate. Like they're like, hey, we can give you this free education. So that's a real problem for us ever getting free education. And I think too, I don't know if you've ever read the book Sapiens, but we are.
I have.
Okay, so the collapse of the imagined order.
Exactly.
We are. I feel very much. I feel very strongly that we're in the collapse of the imagined order, and a lot of that has to do with your crypto. Like we're questioning money. I mean, money isn't real. When we talk about giving the billionaires could give $1 million to every single person in the United States of America, and it wouldn't touch them. The issue is these people aren't that liquid.
That's true.
They're not that liquid. And so because of how we've structured our society, so the money issues that we have in America, I feel so strongly that education is the only way to truly solve that.
I would agree. I think there's I want to go back if I can for just a
and
second.
data bears that out, right? We know that is the answer to crime, the answer to poverty, it is education.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is education.
The example you gave about your small business, Maven, first of all, props to you for recognizing why it's really, really important. Obviously, people over profit. I think that's really, really important. So just, as a small business owner, I mean, I'm an independent contractor. I am my own employee. So I have to ask myself for time off.
Yeah.
Inside joke. It's funny. But the reality is, aside from your SG&A, right, I would imagine the biggest cost is you made the decision to cover your employees' healthcare.
That's correct.
And it's not cheap.
Oh my gosh, no. I just met with my insurance broker actually just last week because not only do we cover their health insurance, but we do a 0 deductible plan.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And so because I can't I can't say what I say and like not put my beliefs
exactly.
in it.
So my point with that is that you, as a small business owner with universal health care in our system, you could afford to pay your employees more.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And what's crazy is when we talk about, listen, y'all, my business, I had to go when we reopened after the pandemic. I had to go to like an automated attendant on our phones because our phones were off the hook because people had money, right? And they wanted to invest that money back into the economy and they invested it back into our businesses. And so like our local businesses, right? And so with my business, we were so busy and which is the whole reason why, I mean, we do profit sharing for our independent contractors. We do paid time off and all that stuff. But the way that we do profit sharing with our independent contractors,
socialist. No, I'm just
I know. I'm
socialist.
Wait till you hear how we do profit sharing. So
Tattoo artist, socialist. You're on MAGA's hit list. You're on MAGA's hit list.
I know. It's so funny. So we do, because of our paid time off for our employees, I was like, I can't, like, you know, I have to work within the confines of the system, right? And like, here's the reality. Could I add every one of my independent contractors to my insurance plan? Yeah, I could. Because the only time I've been audited was for like my employment commission, like basically making sure that everybody's an employee was when I actually applied to get the group policy. And unless they audited me, I could. But because I do have to work within the confines of the system, because if I do something illegal, then that affects the entire business, right? So I can't do that. So I was like, okay, how can I do profit sharing? Well, with my independent contractors, we did basically, if you've been with us for this period, this long of a time, we do paid time off for them as well. So what I'll do is when my artists put in for time off, you know, a week off or whatever, if they've been with us for 1 to 2 years, they get a week. 3 and 4, they get 2 weeks, all the way up to 4 weeks of paid vacation. I need to tell you, out of my 22 employees of my independent contractors, I have 7 that are 7+ year employees. That are independent contractors, and they get 4 weeks paid vacation. And what I do, thank you. And what I do is I just basically average their commission for the previous 3 months, and then I just direct deposit that in their account for the week of vacation. And that has been something that we're like, look, my husband and I are kind of, we don't want other people having ownership in our business. We feel very strongly about, you know, my husband and I are business partners. We are life partners. And we don't want to share the stupid system in which with our business and all the stupid crap that we have to do with that and the risk. So we're like, healthy, happy people need insurance. They need good wages and they need time to relax and rest.
Where in the world are you? Because my son is a tattoo artist who's
we're in Virginia Beach. Come on.
Steve's sending his son down.
There. We're in Virginia Beach. And you know, listen, we took a lot. Look, like there are a lot of culture vultures. There's a lot of culture vultures in politics too. Sure. I got a lot. I came from corporate America. I worked on Wall Street for 14 years. I have a lot of guilt and shame about my career path when I was 19 years old because I didn't know any better and I wasn't educated. And so when, you know, I really needed to kind of absolve myself in some kind of way. So when I became a small business owner, I wanted to make sure that, you know, we shared what we built, because we can't build what we have without the employees, without the people that are working. Like I can't do what I'm doing without them. And I just don't understand. I don't understand.
Maven, look at the loyalty you've created. Look at the model that you've created. I mean, first of all, these stories are so rare. Although, and I think somebody said this in the chat while you were talking, and again, an amazing story about how many other small business or entrepreneurs would be able to take the leap to follow their passion if they knew, first of all, they didn't have to worry about universal health care.
Yep.
Right?
It's universal health care would change. It's because listen, in corporate America, what we called benefits they're called the golden handcuffs for a reason.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
They are
exactly right.
That's what we called them, the golden handcuffs. And like, there is something to be said about that, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't want to offer these things to my people. Like, listen, I tell my people all the time, if you are not happy here, please, we will not be upset. We will not be, especially because we live in a creative world. Stagnation is death to an artist.
That's exactly right.
Right. And so stagnation is death to an artist. So like, if you feel you've worked for us for 8 years and you feel stagnant, like, and there's another place that you want to go create and be around different creatives, because we all learn. It's the same thing with TikTok. Like, in art, my artists, they learn from each other, right? Every day they walk in each other's booths and they look at the tattoos that their peers are doing, and they ask them questions, and they get their thoughts and like where their approach was in their brain. It's the same with politics, right?
Love that.
It's kind of my fear though with vocational and trades, and hear me out on this. I am a huge proponent of vocational school and trades. But my issue right now is that what I see when I'm talking to, now we're going to circle back to politics and policy. When I talk to people who are MAGA and some of these cult members, I'm not going to say that like, some of them are college educated, right? They know better. Mm-hmm. But there are so many that are blindly following the MAGA, party and where we're going in America. And many of them I find are in trades, because one thing that trade is so specific. Yes. Yeah. And you learn this trade. And unless you have a growth mentality, like unless you are a lifelong learner, unless you want to read books and learn, if you have just learned a trade and that is what you do every day, day in and day out, and you're not expanding your knowledge base, I think that's kind of how we got here too. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I'm like, that's my thing with like pushing trade. So I'm like, we just need to, and that goes maybe to education, y'all. Like, and with
it's
school.
all related. Maven, thank you so much.
Thank
for your
you. I
story.
appreciate you guys.
And thank you for. I mean, you're just an example of the people who made a commitment to say your business has grown, and your business has grown not from cutting. Your business has grown by expanding and taking care of your employees. And loyalty for a small business is so rare, especially at that level. But thank you for what you do. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you guys. I love y'all so much. You guys keep doing the good work. I'll keep listening. I appreciate y'all.
Appreciate you. Have a good day.
You too. Amazing talking with you.
Such a great model, right? It's such a great model. For part of some of the work that I do is I help companies synthesize a lot of their benefits programs and how they want to message to their employees. So what I found, because I do research for comparable businesses in that industry, comparable businesses in size, and what I've learned over the past year or so is that benefits are certainly a recruiting tool, right? The better, the more unique benefits you have, the more people that you can recruit. Sadly, though, it's still about competing for benefits that potentially employees would have their claims denied. Meaning that this great benefits will pay for 70% of your healthcare or whatever that might be, and you've got options whether you're a family or whether you're single, whether some businesses now are covering transition surgeries, which are great, those that are progressive, but you're still paying into a system that potentially is going to deny you. So it's crazy. It's been a bit of a gut check for me professionally, because that's a lot of the work that I do, not the benefits side, but just helping synthesize the information so it makes it consumable for employees.
No, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, how do you market that and like make it palatable and help people to understand it? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, and Maven's story is so great because it's rare for small businesses to be able to do that. So good for her. It's a great model. That's
Guys, keep tapping the screen. We were talking about the military, so I looked up some statistics that I thought were interesting. And I think it's important to note that as far like economic motivations, because someone was saying this, right? It's upward. I think people are in the military for upward mobility. 42% cite job stability as a primary reason for joining. 35% cite educational benefits. 27 cite healthcare benefits, and 25% cite paying off student loans, right? Yeah. And veterans have higher median household income than non-veterans, right? So, I mean, it's about upward mobility.
Did your ears perk up, Obi?
Yeah, greetings and salutations.
Hello.
Fabulous to see the two of you on a Monday. I want to do a little history nerdism, Felice. I hope you enjoy this. So this is important, and this is something that people miss because if they didn't serve or didn't come from a military family, they wouldn't know. Like this is going to sound obscure. The Vietnam GI Bill ran from 1955 to 1977. Here's the first question. Between 1955 and 1977, what did the United States of America have?
Economic prosperity for the middle class.
Exactly. Now, who were the direct benefits of middle class upward mobility? You guys have said it about 80 times this morning. Union labor.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right? Now, within union labor, what progressive groups decided that all persons needed to be included? And Steve, we talked about this the other day. What did it take for unions to welcome all Americans, not just military veterans, via the Helmets to Hard Hats program that is equally as old?
White people standing up?
No. What was the main movement in the late 50s, early 60s? And who led it?
Oh, are you talking about the civil rights movement?
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why the Vietnam era GI Bill ended in 77 is in part to what Felice was saying. More importantly, the largest minority group drafted into service for the war in Vietnam was black and brown men.
Black and brown people. Yeah, men.
And they were further benefiting from a system that allowed them to be in the middle class, to gain ownership in housing, to gain jobs through organized labor. What happened in 1954? The military formally integrated. So the Vietnam era GI Bill is actually the nexus of every single thing prosperity gospel white evangelical cis males rallied against. Now, what happened after Roe? Where did that group of people turn its focus from and to? It turned its focus from segregated schools to AB. All of this has to do with racism and bigotry since 1954. It's not just the proletariat. It's the fact that all of these levers, all of these ladders that were put in place, not only for men and women in the military, but for minority groups, the rug was pulled out from underneath in 1977 because the persons who supported men like Richard Nixon, which was a fucking racist piece of shit human being, so was Ronald Reagan, right? This is what this was all about. It was all about making sure that black and brown men no longer had a set of stairs in front of them. That's what this is all about. And there have been books written about this. Many people have written their PhD thesis about this. This is about racism. So here's why America can never be great, right? And first of all, let me just say this as a caveat. Don't be offended, anybody, when I say this. Having a conversation and using the word great is incredibly juvenile and barely third grade at best. This is not a sporting contest. So let's eliminate the word that the right has co-opted. Eliminate the word great. The word should be, where and when can all United States citizen be justly cared for, justly equal, have equality, right? When that is achieved, which in my opinion will never happen, mostly because of the way the Constitution was written, it's virtually impossible, right? Then we could be considered a decent place to live. We will never be great. Stop asking for that measurement. Stop allowing the right to win and control this argument. We won't be great because the racists that continue to run in the GOP circles want to continue to pull out the staircase for marginalized communities so they have no upward mobility. That includes education. That education is just a subset of upward mobility, right?
I feel like it's an I feel like that's implied. I thought the point of this was that this is a dog whistle. I am like my father, I'm indigenous Mexican and black. Like you don't need to tell me that America has never been great. Like I think that we do know that brown and black people in this country are painfully aware of that. I feel like I've said that in this conversation and no one's saying America's great. We're asking MAGA, what does America need to be great? Because the answer is it never was, exactly, and it never will be.
That's exactly right. I get you. I get what you mean, Obi. I get what you mean. But Felice is right. It's really about it's about the conundrum. Not even the conundrum. It's the strange place that MAGA has allowed them to perceive that at one point we were great. Because you think about what MAGA stands for, Make America Great Again. When was it great? Like when
but
was
you're asking persons with no critical thinking skills to answer a question they don't even know is a ruse.
That's the point.
I feel like I started this conversation by communicating that the education system, the reason trades went away, all of that was based in racism. I communicated that. I've been talking all the statistics I shared. I've been talking about racial inequality, gender inequality. I mean, that is where the argument has been built from that I've been making this entire time.
Yeah, I'm not talking about you, Felice. I know you know, right? If you read the comments, right? If I know you guys aren't paying attention to the comments, but the audience right now, for the most part, is completely unaware of these things. It doesn't matter how many times anybody gets up on this platform and says these things, because people have been trying for the last 2.5 years to communicate this. MAGA is never going to understand or engage because they can't. It goes against their ability to be the victim. And as long as they have that mentality, they will never understand what their role is in this.
I started this conversation by saying, in order to have this conversation, MAGA would need to come out of cognitive dissonance.
Right.
Right. I did acknowledge that. And I do watch the comments. And I think I actually think we're having a pretty productive conversation. I think people are understanding. I do watch the comments. I multitask.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're calling it out, Obi. I think maybe you're not necessarily getting the intent here. The intent here was to use it. It is a dog whistle specifically for MAGA, because if they still want to proceed thinking that our country is great, meanwhile they're the ones that are suffering, often in many cases more than we are, under the guise of capitalism, late stage capitalism. The fact that we have, a society that's getting dumber, a society that's getting more and more unhealthy, a society that's getting poorer. And they are the ones, in many cases, especially in those rural states, are the ones that are feeling it the most. So the point is that I think the collective goal here for us to be able to identify certain things that the rest of the world looks at as the bare minimum. We don't have health care. Never will we be great. Never will we be great. And that's the point.
And when you read the book, The Wages of Whiteness, that's what it's about. It's about the exchange that middle and lower class white people in America have made to, let's say, feel important. Maybe I'll get pulled over less by the police, but you're still being robbed by the same people. We are all in the same life raft together. You can believe because of my skin color, I am more important, but you're being robbed by the same people we are being robbed by. That is the message. America will never be great. right? Until you realize who has your money. Somehow Donald Trump convinced people that immigrants have your money. No, the same people have always had your money. So
Exactly.
I feel like that it has been communicated, and I do think people have been grasping it quite well in the comments, but like repetition is important. Teaching and educating is a process.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think just my frustration is that I have not seen one single MAGA in 2.5 years come up and have a coherent conversation.
Well, I feel like when I debate with Pickles, we talk to people that voted for Trump all the time, and they have coherent conversations. I struggle with this. You can insult, you could rage all you want, because believe me, you are talking to a brown, indigenous Mexican black woman who's pansexual. Like, I am so marginalized in society. Like, you have no idea, like the struggle that I face. So but you could come and up here and scream and demean, but as a teacher, right? From an educational perspective, we have to present facts that our survival in this life raft depends on enough people understanding, a critical mass of people understanding who has their money. That it's not brown and black immigrants, that actually brown and black immigrants are paying $88 billion a year into our tax system that they aren't benefiting from.
And I think that's part of the conversation, because again, the reason that we've been told why 76 million people voted for Trump was economic, primarily because it's always about the economy, stupid. And for us to be able to call that out every single day, to remind them not only what we've been telling them, but what we've been telling them for decades about the rise of capitalism, crony capitalism, the wealth gap getting wider and wider, and we can point directly to Republican policies. And not that the left is any innocent, because we put our hand up to the same corporate donors. But when you run on, I'm going to end inflation, I'm going to lower your price for a gallon of eggs, I'm going to get rid of all the brown people, and then when none of those things happen, or when they do happen, the economy crashes, we are going to be there to remind them exactly what they voted for. I think that's the point. At least that was the intent for this conversation.
Yeah, and if I missed the beginning, it's probably because I was asleep.
That's okay. Yeah, it's all good.
If you started at 5 a.m.
We were very clear. We were very, very clear out of the gate that we know that the system is rigged against every marginalized group, and even in the impact of people that voted for Trump, it will hurt them as well, and that's what they don't know yet. Sadly.
Yeah. Well, they'll feel it here shortly. It's only going to take about another 90 days, but you know what's going to happen? Gas is going to go up. The price of food is going to go up, as it has every single year since I've been alive. Yeah. And they're just going to dismiss it.
Of course. Right. Because they're now their Lord and Savior has told them, it's hard. Can't bring it's hard to bring prices down once they're already.
Which I will say this. It was probably the most honest thing he's ever said aloud, ever.
It's a good point. That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
After he sold a big lie to them, right? Oh, everything's going to be great. Prices are immediately going to come down. We're going to drill, baby, drill. Like, as somebody who is very well versed in the global economy, right? We are drilling more. We are drilling more and we're exporting more oil than any country in history has ever exported. And if you actually understand the energy industry and hear what they're saying, they don't want to drill anymore, right? Because the global demand for oil is going down.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. We're transitioning to other types of fuel, and it's a tightrope walk. It's not American can produce as much oil as we want. There's something called supply and demand. You are then going to drive down the price of oil per barrel, and they want the tax cuts. Oil and gas wanted those corporate tax cuts from Trump, right? They want the deregulation. But we're already, they're like, we're drilling enough. I was just listening to an oil and gas conference in London where the ExxonMobil CEOs are like, no, this is good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They have a very narrow band to stay profitable. It is extremely narrow. And they keep bouncing against the bottom and the top of that. And what's going to happen, which is what happened last time, is more oil and gas exploration companies will go out of business. They'll start to shrink the amount of leases that they use. And then the price of oil will go up.
We're
and
almost
also,
at 300K, guys. Keep tapping.
We really?
You're doing a great job.
If everyone power taps for exactly 5 minutes, maybe even 2.5. We will be above 300,000. Please do keep in mind it is super duper important to gift Felice and Steve both. Next to Fact Still Matters is the little heart me. That costs exactly 1 penny. Directly below that is some kind of a bubble gun, I think is what that is. That's one way to engage in the live, and it always goes away. There's also subscriptions. Felice and Steve both have link trees in their bio. If you care to support these two amazing creators, please do so by going to their link tree and interacting with the links. I do hear that there are merch stores available as well. And Steve,
yeah,
I've been needing to say this all morning. Bro, you need to be a little more zen.
Hey, Obi, I am fucking zen, okay? Seriously, bro. Gosh.
Hashtag dad girl.
Or girl dad.
Girl dad. I could steal that. Hey, listen, one last thing before I go. The person you had up here before that was talking about how as a small business owner, the choices and decisions that you have to make. And how important that is. First of all, that's a fascinating story that I will, now that I'm following that person, I will be wanting to dig into more. I think this goes back to two things, my last 2 points. One is I've been talking about the power of family communal living and getting back to not being so spread out. And also the power of having a business that runs as a co-op.
Yeah.
I'll be reaching out to you later this afternoon to talk to you about that co-op thing that I'm trying to spin up. And looking forward to seeing you when you come to Los Angeles.
That's right.
Felice isn't that far away. She's only just a few hours away, or about 35 minutes by plane. So one of these days we gotta get the two of you together. We should have a meet and greet, either here in SoCal or in the greater Phoenix metropolitan area.
Works for me. Thank you, buddy.
All right.
We appreciate you very much.
Peace and love, all.
Have a lovely
Cheers.
day. See you later. Just another little note. We are also looking for more additional mods. So there's a mod application that is in our Discord if anybody is interested. And in particular, if you've got any YouTube streaming experience, that'd be awesome. My YouTube and my Blue Sky are right here. If you'd like to follow those, that'd be great. We're trying to build up our community there. But thank you for that, Obi. All right. So it's 11 o'clock, guys. We're at 300,000 likes. That's kind of disappointing, to be honest, since Felice is here on a Monday. Appreciate you guys all just banging on the like button and then and sharing the live like crazy, like your life depended on it. Ellie, how are you today?
Fine. I'm from Belgium, and I was wanting to talk about the schools.
Okay.
So I don't know. Here in Belgium, we actually have professional schools where you can start when in high school, when you're in 7th or 8th grade already. It's with plumbing, kitchen, cooking, electrician, all of the handymans actually. And so I don't know, when you say trade school, at what ages is that?
So typically speaking, like there's vocational high schools in the U.S. So grade 9. Typically speaking, and then there's post high school trade schools. There's also mentorship programs, apprentice programs. Depends on the industry.
Because you always talk about college. So for me, college is like above 18 years of age.
Yes. Yeah.
No?
It's both. So there is higher education would be an advancement of your career choice, whatever that might be. So more vocationally oriented trade schools post high school would be great for our society. And they exist, but there's just not enough of them.
Yeah, and also I wanted to say that, like, for example, here in Belgium, my son went to university and his tuition fee was only $1,000 per year. So, I mean, it's something really incredible. I mean, and you also can ask for a scholarship if your parents your parents only have like around, I mean, they don't have a high salary. So
Makes me want to cry. I'm happy for you. It just makes me want to cry. Like, God, can we all just take a moment and just cry?
But, my sister went to Whittier College in California. in the 80s, and my father was like paying $10,000 per year for her university. But that was in the 80s before I think Reagan kind of screwed up the tuition fees and everything. So yeah, and so I mean I don't understand. I mean I think that in Texas you do have free colleges also. No?
Oh, where did you say?
In Texas.
Texas?
Yeah, I've
No,
heard
I
that
mean,
they have.
there are
No,
some.
but there were some people saying that there were free colleges in Texas.
No, College of Hard Knocks potentially, but that's about it.
Mm.
There are some states that offer significantly reduced tuition rates for in-state students.
Okay.
Like so California.
College of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, that was funny.
Yeah. States' rights, brother. The College of States'
Yeah.
rights, brother. So there are some states that do offer reduced tuition rates for in-state students, but
Yeah. I think it's really incredible. I mean, it's just incredible to thinking that the tuitions are so expensive. It doesn't allow, I mean, to go to have a good education. I mean,
correct.
It's pitiful, I think.
I agree.
Well, and people are saying low income people sometimes get like free tuition. Those grants, a lot of those come through the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wave goodbye to those.
Yeah, but I'm not going to talk to you about the healthcare system here in Belgium, because otherwise you're going to start crying also.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very glad that we do have that here in Belgium, because I did have a bladder cancer, so they took out my bladder, and now I'm with with pouches, and I'm very glad that I'm here in Belgium, because everything is free for me. So I don't know how that would be for a person that has a kind of cancer in the United States.
People lose their life. That's what happens here.
Yeah.
Laugh so I don't cry. It's
I know,
not funny.
I know.
It's
Ellie,
just,
thank you
it's
so
not
much for
funny,
being here
really.
today. Appreciate you being here, friend. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and I think that this conversation is really nice, changing from Trump and always Trump. It's nice changing this kind of and have those kind of conversation. Actually,
Thank you for saying that. We need it too. Have a good day.
yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
You
Bye-bye.
got it. Thanks. Yeah, there are so many. Again, just think about this, Felice. Right. So the rest of the world. I think it was Erica. You know Victoria from. You might know Victoria for Tennessee. She's a mutual on the app. She ran for Congress in the state of Tennessee, and she went to the UK. She's got family over there, and she stayed with our friend Erica they hung out for a couple of days, and her son got sick or hurt his arm or something and had to go to the emergency room basically. And the nurse was kind of like laughing or he cut his head open. And I've been there as a parent in the US, I've literally used super glue to close cuts and wounds for my kids as they've grown up. And Victoria was telling the practitioner this story, and the nurse was looking at her like she had four heads. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't just go to the doctor? No, we don't. We duct tape and baling twine and a little glue and call it a day. And the rest of the world laughs. And again, for the claim that we'd like to make that we're the freest society on earth, that we've got more independence, that we've got more freedoms, that it's backward thinking. It needs to be fixed, sadly. Gifting goal, guys, up here, kind of hanging flat. Please consider subscribing. Felice's pay apps are above her head. Everybody keep tapping. Hi, Mary.
Hi. Thank you for having me up again.
You got it.
I've been up here a couple of times, and I don't usually talk about myself in this, but when it comes to the education and the paying for things, like when I voted for people that were more disenfranchised than myself, and now I get to be in the fuck around and find out phase with everybody else. And I have the Affordable Care Act. I have student loans that are going to go away on the SAVE plan. I'm looking at, if I have to pay for both of those things, but I'm looking at my loans going from $96 a month to being over almost $400 a month, over $300 a month. And the same with healthcare. So overall, like $600 more a month when I make less than $3,000 net. And the reason being is that I went to an expensive school, because people don't realize how expensive school is. You're told when you're a kid that it's the way to go. Right. And I'm working in a trade, and I know people that have gone to trade school, and trade school is not that much cheaper. People that are mechanics, people that are beauticians, people that are electricians, all of that stuff. And I know people that have paid tens of thousands of dollars to go to tech school, and they have loans too, because they still did the FAFSA.
Yeah, I'm in the process of, I've got another FAFSA I've got to do next fall as my daughter starts to apply to colleges. And like I said earlier, I was talking to my accountant recently. I said, hey, I need to look really poor on paper. He's like, don't worry, you do. I'm like, cool.
And I realized because I sew for a living. I went to school for theater because as a kid, I thought that'd be fun. But I quickly realized while I was there that a lot of the people that I went to came from very wealthy families. Their parents paid for them to go to art school. And I get together with some of them every couple years. We had our 10-year reunion where I met up with some people I hadn't talked to in 10 years. And there's a girl in my class, she's buying her second house. And they're very nice people, and they admit that their benefits are because of their family. And they literally look at our class and say, we know that our success is based on the fact that our parents were wealthy, because we had a very big even split in our class of the people who came on loans and the people whose parents were wealthy. And they're like, look, we got the same education. Who's successful right now? Who's buying houses, who's owning businesses, and who went back to a tech school for some other trade so they could try and make some money. And it's literally split right along the divide of the people who went with loans and the people whose parents had money.
Yeah, because what does it take? And that is the truth. You can sit there and believe that Elon Musk is some extraordinary genius, or Donald Trump is some extraordinary genius. You can worship people, but if you look, all it takes to be successful in capital is access to capital. Period. That's what it takes to be successful in capitalism, is access to capital. Period. Yep. If you happen to be born with access to capital, you have a way better chance of succeeding than the ones they say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which is a literal oxymoron. You cannot do it. And and that's why when you speak to MAGA, like in debates, you just need to say, hey, if everyone can do it, why aren't you a billionaire? Oh, so you must not be smart. Something's wrong with you then, right? Because this system is rigged. If you have access to capital, you have a high percentage chance of succeeding in capitalism. If not, good luck to you.
Last Friday night, we did a live, and the topic was, why aren't billionaires the common enemy? And I was watching some of the comments scroll by in the chat, and one person actually said, why do you guys hate billionaires so much? Meaning you guys on the left. And I'm still gobsmacked by that. I'm still gobsmacked by that comment. When I look at people living in poverty, the highest rates of child poverty in our nation, some of the worst healthcare outcomes, $7.25 minimum wage, wealth gap getting wider and wider. And then you ask why we hate billionaires so much? Why don't you? The question is, why don't you hate billionaires so much?
Real wages don't keep up with inflation, and all the profits go to the top 1% of this country. You can watch time-lapse graphs, us handing all of the profits to the top of this country, and they're not even being taxed on it and paying into Social Security so we can survive.
There's a guy on this app that, because people don't visualize it well, and you can look it up if you type in wealth in rice or something like that measured out that 1 grain of rice, he was like, this is like a net worth of $200,000, which is more than most Americans have. Yeah. But a wealth of $200,000 for a single grain of rice, and then weighed out rice to be like, this is how much a millionaire has, which is like 4 grains. And then now this is what Trump has, and this is what Elon Musk has, and Elon Musk's pile is like half the room.
Yeah, exactly.
And most people don't have a single grain of rice.
Thanks for jumping in today, Mary. Appreciate you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Can you just imagine
that? It's a good way to think about it.
Exactly. Can you just imagine that, though? Why do you hate billionaires? It's not a personal hatred. It's the system I can't stand, right? Although it's becoming personal. It's like, imagine that. It's the same people. This is the hypocrisy, right? It's the same people that complain about, we've got houseless people. We've got houseless veterans. Why aren't we spending money on those people? We're going to send our money to Ukraine or the Ukraine, as they like to say. We're going to send our money to the Ukraine and, to root out the Yahtzees in there, the Putin sympathizers, while Putin was justified. The same people that say, why aren't we spending our money at home, when given an option to spend our money at home for things like education reform and universal health care, say, can't do that. That's socialism. States' rights, brother. It's this fascinating conundrum that the right wing echo chamber and their media has convinced them that genuinely helping Americans, which is what they bitch about, is socialism. Make that make sense.
And it's not, and again, these programs that you consider socialism, it's not just minorities that benefiting them. The biggest beneficiary of Title IX is white women.
Affirmative action.
Who's on SNAP? Right? Who's on food stamps? Disproportionately people, non-Hispanic white people in the South. That's who.
Yep.
That's who it is. I caught him. It's you.
What are some other things on your list?
It's you, Felice? Conservatives in the South. You guys are benefiting from these programs. I do. Well, as far as I do have more things to talk about, actually. As far as what we can't, talking about the conundrum of making America great as if it ever has been great. But another thing that I wanted to discuss was infrastructure. Not talking about just roads, but this is capitalism. Why is America like it is as far as our infrastructure? The developed world does not operate like America, right? Why are we all driving around in cars? The automotive lobby, right? High-speed railway. Why don't we have a high-speed railway in America? Because the aviation lobby.
Every highway in Europe. What do you see? High-speed rail next to every interstate, next to every autobahn. Yeah.
We are a third world country, right? We should all have high speed rails. That's how developed countries operate. That's how you travel, is on high speed rail. We do not waste our time with cars, and the cost of cars is exorbitant on us. It's inefficient. It doesn't make sense. We should have a high-speed railway. We have plans for a high-speed railway in America, but the automotive lobby, the aviation lobby, right? They won't allow it to happen. Yep. The automotive insurance lobby, capitalism will not allow us to progress. That's the point I like to make about our infrastructure is messed up. We shouldn't have to maintaining the cost of a car. Think of the cost to your household, maintaining the cost of a vehicle. It shouldn't be.
And think about that, in wanting to repeal the infrastructure bill that was passed under the Biden administration, that you hear talk about wasteful spending on infrastructure. Literally, investing in American infrastructure has now been deemed socialism, has now been deemed a bad thing. Expanding access
Mackenzie,
to
this live, I think Fax and I right now, a girl has no name is my YouTube name as well. And this is live on YouTube, and then the replays automatically post to YouTube. So if you want to see this live played back, you can see it on YouTube.
Yeah. So just think about that for a second, right? I mean, again, American excellence, right? Why not have the best infrastructure in the world? It's not that we're not capable of doing it. It's not that we can't afford it. On the contrary, why shouldn't we have a high-speed rail across the country? The best high-speed rail, the best public education system, the best grid, the best sustainable energy program. They're missing the point, right? Depending on the kind of society that you want, why do we continue to fight over the bread crust? Because the corporate capitalists, crony capitalism, late stage capitalism, the billionaire class. Oh, you got a boogie guy. Love that one. That's what America is now. That's what we are. That's what the U.S. has become. It's not that hard. It's not that hard for people it is hard because we have to convince a large chunk of our voting
But shouldn't we just spend 1,000 times more than every other country on our military, so military contractors get rich in capitalism? I mean, war is our business, right?
Exactly.
Forever wars. That's another capitalistic industry that very rich people profit off of. Forever wars, being the number one arms dealers in the world. This is like never ending Lord of War. We're Nicolas Cage.
It's true. I'm glad you brought up infrastructure because that ties back to education a bit.
My YouTube handle is A Girl Has No Name. It's the same as TikTok.
And you'll find mine right above me, or the link is in my link tree. I live in a state where we have K through 12 schools. I think there are 14 K through 12 schools in the state of Vermont, which are small community schools, right? There may be 150 kids in the entire school, K through 12, right? And those schools have nothing. They have nothing from a resource perspective. They've worked it out. They've managed through it. The community gets involved. Again, why not be able to brag to the world that the U.S. has the best education system, public education system on planet Earth? Shouldn't that be a goal? Why would anybody be against that? Why would anyone be against that? Right-wing messaging. Oh, they're teaching all that gay stuff in schools. I don't want that. We got to ban books so they don't understand real history. That's the focus.
Can I give you a thought on that? Because I always have thought about this too. And Vermont ranks consistently very high in education in K through 12. The Vermont, if you guys don't know, right? I come from Arizona. We're consistently, I think, 48th or 49th. We go back we're the worst. We're almost the worst. Like there's usually one or two states worse than us, in all fairness. And Vermont, like he's saying, it's a they don't have much, but what do they have? And I'm saying this as a former teacher, and I'm sure people who have taught in the chat are going to say they know. Because why, Trump makes this argument, hey, we spend more on education than any other country. And look, we're awful at it. It's not about money, right? But first of all, things cost more in America. The American dollar is valued high, right? Sure. Like that has something to do with it. Things just simply cost more in America, and we spend more per student. But in my opinion, right, the reason the education doesn't work in America, it doesn't mean, hey, let's abolish the Department of Education. The underserved people who are getting grants to go to university, or, it's grants for disabled children and things of that nature. We don't need to do away with that. What we need, capitalism affects the community's ability to support children's education. Do you know what I'm saying? As a teacher, it is the parents that have the time and energy to be involved, to know like what homework assignments are in their kids' backpack, exactly. To make sure that they help them read at night. Like, community involvement in children's education is the difference between it taking hold or not. Repetition is how children learn. I can teach it to them in school, but somebody needs to reinforce it at home.
Greg in the comments said Arizona's motto is "Thank God for Mississippi."
We're number 48. No, just kidding.
No, but you're right. I mean, that, to your point, I think I know where you're going with that. It is a very community-oriented approach for public education in Vermont.
Vermont seems to me to be very community-oriented, period.
It is, yeah. I mean, we all have to huddle together because it's so damn cold all the time. But the reality of this, and I think it's not just Vermont, but states who are, I think about active school boards. I think about community involvement when it comes to public education funding. Typically speaking, the communities that prioritize education don't quibble as much when school budgets go out to be voted on by the masses. They tend to pass them because they're involved. I live in a small town in Vermont, a really small town, a few hundred people. And when the referendum came up, because we had a ballot measure that came up, I think the entire town was there, and they all knew what was in it. Everybody knew what was in the bill. Everybody knew we were going to get a new library because the library had water damage. Everybody knew that they wanted to add solar panels to the roof because they wanted to try an experiment because the building was identified as a hot spot for sunlight. So these are the things that communities get involved in. And to your point, that's what it takes, because money will only get you so far. It's like how you spend it, what your priorities are.
And someone asked about school vouchers. I don't know if it's known, like Arizona is the earliest of the early adopters of school vouchers. Before MAGA knew what school vouchers were, Arizona has been doing school vouchers. Like when I was a child, in school, there were school vouchers. And yeah, it's diluted our public education. That's why we are the case study for, hey, does school vouchers work? Is that helping kids in that state have great test scores? No.
No.
I was taking us on that journey of like when education branched off and how it started becoming racist and disproportionately affect, disenfranchising brown and black people. And we can talk about how that journey involves the military as well. But it really starts in public school education, right? First of all, property taxes are what fund public schools. Indeed. So in rich neighborhoods, you have schools in Arizona that look like malls that were just built, an airport where like planes could land. Fields. Yeah, drop kids off and it looks amazing. And in the impoverished areas, they're ramshackle and run down and have been using the same books for decades. That's the reality. This is the new Jim Crow. This is segregation at its best. Keep the poor and uneducated and keep the upward mobility of the upper and middle class to, 1%. That is the reality. And then when you dilute that funding with vouchers, right? Yeah, sure. Rich or children with upward mobility, middle class or upper middle class and up, they can take that voucher. Their mom probably has an extra vehicle to drive them to and from school.
Exactly.
Without a school bus and drive them somewhere and go pick them up. Now, can lower middle class kids do that? No.
Nope.
And that money is taken out of public school funding. Lower middle class kids suffer and the rich get richer.
Yeah, charter schools. I would think about that from a public school perspective. Just in my own perfect example, I think it's 64 miles from my house to the closest charter school, for example, if that was a model that was going to be used, right? So there's no way that would happen. There's just no way. And I'm glad you said it the way you said it, because I've asked this question numerous times. Who pays the difference on vouchers? And, MAGA can generally never answer the question, or they'll say the parents. I'm like, okay, there's parents now in our country. You realize that oftentimes the only square meals a day that their kid get is breakfast and lunch at school, public education. And you guys vote against school lunches, by the way.
At breakfast. When I was a teacher, my student teaching, I used to cry in my car. If students missed breakfast, they were not eating. They were there because that muffin and that milk was the only food they were going to get.
Yeah. So what else is on your list? Because I have a couple other things too. I'm curious about what some of the things, highlights of things that you'd like to see change structurally.
Well, you can do one if you want. Let me pull it up. Let's see. We talked about infrastructure modernization, but yeah, I could go into it. I could talk about power grids. We have to move to nuclear energy.
Yeah, innovation. I'm with you. Energy, like our dependence. For me, it's about accepting the fact that, first of all, big oil, some of the largest investors in sustainable energy programs, so that should tell you that they see the future. Like, again, this goes to infrastructure, a grid. We should, again, why do we have pockets of our country that don't have high-speed access to the web? I'm not saying Starlink. I'm saying why.
You cannot have upward mobility in our society anymore without high-speed access to the internet. You cannot get a job. You cannot be found for the possibility of having a job. Access to the internet is what pulls people out of poverty, and not dial-up. Like, we need broadband connection, or we need fiber. We need cable wire that connects people in rural areas to the internet. That is upward mobility.
I still think of infrastructure. I think about there's still communities that have lead pipes. I still think about access to clean water and clean air. And again, when you have a political party now in charge who wants to literally do away with the EPA, to do away with the FDA. And again, this is the lie that MAGA has been told. You think these organizations are corrupt. You think that all the regulations that they put on are just anti-business. It protects you. Sure, they can be inefficient. We can all agree on that. Absolutely. They should all be able to be accountable. But why has the Department of Defense failed an audit 7 years in a row? Why is that? Why don't you talk about that more? But instead.
Oh, and I'll be interesting. Yeah. If the Department of Government Efficiency was going to do something good, they would look into the Pentagon's audits for sure. Why are we spending $33 million on Viagra for the military? I don't know. Someone needs to look into it, though.
Sounds like it might be an issue. They might want to
talk about. I don't know what's happening, but that's a lot of Viagra.
They could probably
I'm just saying
universal health care for mental health access. That might help. I'm just saying.
I have that separate too. I actually had that separate for my healthcare section because I think baseline, like we have to have stop saying, "Oh, look at how crazy people are. Why are people doing all these crazy things?" This is baseline normal in America. People need access to mental health care. We are not turning this around until people have access to mental health care, regular access to mental health care. Everyone. Like people are screaming for it. But again, personal responsibility.
It's funny. I was out yesterday in my quest to find common ground, just running errands, and I went to a spot where I get this guy his dog food, and I was thinking if there's anything that would anything that you could potentially unite Americans, it would be dogs.
That's true, but I feel that way about cats. They're misunderstood. But not to say I love all animals. Animals love me. I think it's a great sign if animals love you. Animals love me and kids. So there you go. Not so much with adults, but animals and children love me. I was thinking, I was just putting these bullet point things in. Adult literacy in the U.S. sits around 79%.
That's crazy. And
we're number one, right? But 31% of us can't read.
On average, is in a sixth grade reading level. It might even be fifth.
Oh yeah, I didn't put that in, but just to compare countries like Finland, Norway, and Sweden, their literacy rates are above 90%. Because I was just like, okay, is that low? Yeah, it's in the developed world. It's extremely, extremely low.
Again, that's another opportunity, right? To educate, everything sort of works its way back towards education. The infrastructure not being built to support advancement, the infrastructure not there to support overall health and wellness. I mean, we do have in the Constitution the general welfare, right? That's important. We have a relatively illiterate society that's getting dumber and dumber. Those that are exposed to misinformation and disinformation because they've never developed critical thinking skills can't navigate through what's misinformation and what's disinformation.
Can I say something to someone in the comments? Andy, sure. Andy says, cry about things you can't do nothing about, only cause hate. Thank you. Andy, you're welcome to come up here and have a conversation. It's so strange when you bring statistics and data to a conversation to show MAGA that America is not great. It's never been great, and it's not going to be great unless we change things. Things that you're being told by Republicans can't be changed, or for some reason they won't change. And we start pointing out every other successful country in the world has all these things and are still capitalists. They're not communists. Nothing horrible's happening, but they enjoy these things. And then for some reason, we have not had one person come up here, but they'll scream about tariffs they know nothing about all last week, but not one person will come up here and tell us why it's okay that they don't have health care when every other developed country in the world has health care.
Yeah, and Andy, based on your sentence syntax and structure, you would benefit for improvement to the education system in our country. I'm just saying, just as observational, just saying. I sent you an invite.
79%.
Yeah, I mean, 79%. So I think at last check, I think it was a fifth or a sixth grade reading level. I mean, that's embarrassing. That's just embarrassing. But this is what happens. So again, the power of the right, their ability to convince their voters that Felice is the enemy. Because Felice literally checks just about every box there is to check. I don't mean to laugh about it, laugh so I don't cry, like you say. But you literally check every box from a marginalized group, like everyone. Everyone.
Exactly. I know it's not great. Don't point it out. So no, I'm just going under the radar. I got all these weird. We could talk about environmental or work-life balance. What's interesting about work-life balance,
Just tell me one thing. What have you guys have changed? Just tell me.
What have you guys have changed is not correct sentence structure, Andy.
I'm sorry. I speak multiple languages. English wasn't my first language. I am so sorry.
I don't like the picture on your profile. I really can't get past that.
What have changed since you guys been doing this live? Just tell me one thing, please. That's all I want to know.
Do you think that Felice and I can change?
No, don't ask me questions. Just tell me what you have changed.
You asked a question. Can I answer it?
Okay, sure. But you're not answering it. You're trying to go around something.
Why don't you give me a chance to answer?
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. So we're talking about the systemic changes that are required to even have the allure of forward progress in our nation, right?
That's not answering my question.
Do you believe America's great, Andy?
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure. Does it matter what I think?
Well, you've been quite, chatty
I'm just
in the
asking
chat.
what you guys sitting here do. Like, what changes?
We're talking about the things in our society that need to be fixed. We're talking about how a system, when we
So
have
you
the
guys
number
can't
one.
change anything.
Okay, put a 1 in the chat if today you've learned something from the conversation that we've
Yeah,
had.
tell me what you guys have
No,
learned from
Andy,
here, please.
quiet time, Andy.
Oh,
Put a 1 in the
wait.
chat if you've learned something from the
You guys haven't
conversation we've.
answered any of my
Okay, Andy,
questions.
there's
Just
your
one
answer.
second.
Now look down in the chat, Andy. That's your answer. What are we doing here today? We're educating people. That's your answer,
What?
Andy.
Okay, what
Okay,
have
so
you
you asked
educated
us,
people
asked and
on?
answered, Andy. Move on.
Yeah. So Andy, like, do you think it's
So you
okay?
guys haven't changed anything. That's for sure, right?
So again, if you don't value education, Andy, that's very obvious in the way that you communicate with people, but some people
guess.
do. And data says, Andy, impact studies say that
What data?
education
From
is
what
in
data?
fact the answer to poverty.
whatever you
It
wanna
is, and
watch
it is the
and
answer
look
to
at?
crime. It
That's
is the answer to
And
sickness.
speaking
It is
like
the
this
answer
facts?
to it's the answer to upward mobility in society. It's the answer to wage increase. It's the answer to every problem we have here in America,
Answer.
Andy. And the fact that
Well, you
you
can't change
remain
anything, that's
ignorant
for
of
sure,
that
right?
is not
But
in
can't
any
change
way
anything.
surprising to me
By
personally.
you crying about all that
Andy,
hasn't changed
nobody
anything.
is crying. Again, Andy, you haven't correctly identified an issue. I am telling you, education is the answer to your problems, Andy.
Yeah, I guess, Andy, it's easy to chirp in the cheap seats. I guess I'm wondering, what would you do? Do you think it's worthwhile for our country to invest in education and to make our electorate smarter? Do you think it's worthwhile for us as a nation to invest in healthcare so that our citizens are living longer as opposed to having life expectancy go in the opposite direction? Do you care about anything like that? You can unmute your microphone. Andy?
I don't think he knows how.
Okay, I'll send you an invite to unmute your mic. So would you answer that question for me, please? Are you going to unmute, Andy? You're just going to sit there with your microphone muted. Going once. Going twice. Okay. Andy doesn't want to engage. And do you want to have a conversation or not? Yes or no? You have to unmute your mic if you want to have a conversation. Okay. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Riveting.
Totally riveting. Such an important part of that conversation, Andy. Anyway,
and I just want to say I have personally, because what Anthony was saying, he never has in 2 years. I have talked to people that voted for Donald Trump and I've had very good conversations. I think Pickles and I, when we debate together tonight, I don't want to say I'm hopeful because that's a stretch, but like I have to have a little bit of hope. All right. It's like, how am I going to survive the next 4 years? But I do think that we've had, since the election, some very productive conversations with people that have voted for Donald Trump that have come back and talked to us multiple times. So Andy, you are the outlier. Like, some people can have conversations about what we need to see in America, and everybody knows we should have health care. Like,
had an amazing conversation with someone who called in on Friday night because they were a Trump voter and they were not in support of universal health care because they thought it was going to cost us more money. And I literally went through this breakdown. I took her through every single step, the average cost per person, what proposed tax increases would be, that we'd save $7,000 on average per citizen or more. Everybody would have coverage. We'd live longer, all these kinds of things. Then I said, so you are now an advocate for universal health care, aren't you? And she said, yeah, I guess I am. She's like, because there's really no argument against, is there? I'm like, nope, there's not. So that was a potential conversation. I think to Obi's point, if you can lead the horse to water, and then at the last minute when they say, yeah, I don't give a shit though, I don't want my taxes to go up, or the Democrats are worse, that's when the conversation goes off the rail, right?
And there are many of those. 100%. I agree. There's many of those, but for me, as someone who truly believes in education, as a teacher, I don't pick out my class. Like, some people are unwilling to listen for different ideas. They come from different backgrounds. Like, they have different, have different childhoods, different levels of trauma. And it's like, I will always try at least to reach everyone. But yeah, like with people like Andy, I mean, oppositionally defiant is, you don't have to be that way, Andy. Like we're all trapped in a place without healthcare. You want to go to the doctor. You can act tough and act like it doesn't matter. We don't have anything, but we should be able to go to the doctor. And anybody in good faith can admit that.
I think part of this is because, we like to have these intelligent conversations, and that's why I really love your brain. I think that's part of the reason why we don't get a lot of opposition requesting. Not that they aren't unwilling to, but again, how do you rebut it? You can't make an argument against a smarter electorate. You can't make an argument against universal health care so that we all can live longer. There is no arguments to be made. The problem with that, which is part of the reason I think we don't want to get conversations from the right, because they're going to have to stand there and say, we shouldn't have universal health care because it's socialism. Okay, what is socialism? Well, I don't know. It's fascism. No, that would be the opposite. Again, this whole mind fuck that they're stuck in, right? And I think it's why these conversations are important for the rest of us who see the stark contrast. And I will literally go right after the apathy of the left in this case. What are you going to do about it? If you got fired up because a CEO lost his life, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to rage for a couple of days and celebrate and free Luigi, hashtag free Luigi? Or are you going to get involved? Are you going to run for school board? Are you going to run for city council? Are you going to run for office? Are you going to identify down ballot politicians and progressive politicians and vote for them to support them? Are you going to donate to causes? Are you going to volunteer in your community? Are you going to go out and defend the rights of marginalized groups? These are the things that I've been doing my whole life. Felice's been doing her whole life. This is the shit this is what it takes to move the needle. Apathy on the left cost us 2 elections. 2 of them.
Could not agree more. We need to organize it. We need to do something about it. And that starts with education. I mean, that is the point, right?
Yeah.
No, I am not. Good for you, Mac. You do nothing. You do less than nothing, Mac.
This might be, do you have anything else you want to cover off on?
No, I mean, I think we're good. Stop it. Guys, tap the screen. Can we get facts to 400K really quick? Can we do that? Can we power tap the screen and get facts to 400K? I just wanted to read about just this again, because the top 1% of Americans owns about 32% of the nation's total wealth. The bottom 50% of Americans hold only 2% of the nation's wealth. 50, and that's pretty much most of us that are sitting here right now. Like the bottom 50% of America holds 2% of the nation's wealth. That's why we can't go to the doctor. Conservative policies create that wealth gap. It's not going to get smaller under Donald Trump. The data shows there's no money trickling down. You could keep voting for it and saying, but Donald Trump said, I would invite you as someone who's neurodivergent, do not listen to words anymore. Look at data, follow patterns, follow the money. The money is going straight up to the top. You're working your ass off and the money is trickling straight up to the top. And that's all we're saying is America's not great until it's great for everyone.
And you're part of a system with healthcare that has a business model built to deny your claims, the money that you paid into for Social Security, your retirement, your entire life. The party that you support wants to gut it. They want to take that money to defend or to pay for the tax cuts that they want to hand on corporations so the rich can get richer. Where is that argument? Yeah, Elon Musk, worth $500 billion, sitting down with U.S. senators who are on average worth about $2.5 million, who make $15,000 a month, who have the best health care in the world and the best pension. They're collaborating to take away the $1,700 a month that American seniors get through Social Security.
And saying, don't worry, they can retire at 70 instead of 67 or what used to be 65 and before that even lower. It's fine. These are people that we are paying their pensions. These are conservatives sitting in Congress saying, oh, they can just work 3 years longer. Life expectancy is going down. It's 76.1 right now in the United States. And they want to raise the retirement age to 70.
Yeah, so
you can hobble around for 5
$50 a month, exactly, as we're all pre-diabetic or whatever else.
Yeah,
we can't afford to
on
go to
death's door, can't go to the doctor.
Can't
We
go to
have
the doctor.
saved nothing, one illness away from medical bankruptcy, but we're making America great again as the money trickles up. And they tell you the opposite. Don't listen to the words, follow the money. I promise you, immigrants do not have your money.
That's right. But it's the brown skinned people. You've worked your entire life. You're now told you have to wait another 5 years before you can retire at 70. You're only going to live on average another 6 years. They're laughing at you, but it's the immigrants. And
you're like, well, we can't do it in billionaires. If we do something to them, then the money's not going to trickle down. It's not trickling down now.
Nope.
But then there won't be any jobs. This is the largest economy. This is the largest marketplace in the world. They can't leave here.
But
they can't.
It will eventually trickle down.
Yeah. Oh, 2 weeks. It's coming.
2
you guys.
weeks.
We now have decades upon decades of data that say the transfers of wealth during the boom bust of capitalism are going up and they're not coming back down. And that's why you need to regulate capitalism. You need to incentivize. I don't really even like the word tax because I think you can positively incentivize people to recirculate the money throughout the economy. And that's what we have to do. We have to incentivize the rich to reinvest in the economy.
Yeah, they won't do it on their own, right? That's why
we have the data to show that.
And this is the biggest knock that I have on even the left when they want to propose economic changes. They want to talk about, incremental increases to the corporate tax rate from 26 to 28 or from 28 to 30. I say, fuck that. Let's go back to the way it was when the middle class was booming in the 50s and 60s when it was 54%. The top marginalized tax rate was 90%. And for those of you who don't know, what that marginalized means is that it's every dollar above a certain dollar. So back in the 50s and the 60s, when it was 90%, I think it was $400,000 was the number. So that would be like $3 million in today's money. So every dollar somebody earns over $3 million, they're taxed at 90%.
Richie says, I've learned plenty this morning. Thanks, Felice. Thank you, Richie. You're amazing. I really appreciate you. That makes me feel nice. That's a good way to end. And we made it to 400,000.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, guys. This is great. I love doing this with Felice. This is awesome. We're going to rate our friend Matt, USMC Angry Vet, or US McAngry.
Tell him Felice said hi. Facts and Felice, but I love Matt. He's great. He's such a great guy.
So how would you like to wrap today? And thank you, Richie. Appreciate you, buddy, as always.
I feel good about this. I like I said, that's how I like to wrap is just, hey, MAGA, if you think in any way I mean to be confrontational, I am trapped in a life raft with you, floating in the middle of the ocean. Like, we are all stuck together. You don't see it that way. You think you're on some other team where you're fighting culture wars. No, that's what they want us to think. Until we all wake up and realize who has our money, we're going to continue being robbed. We have to stop fighting each other and fight for our survival. Oh my gosh, that is so cute. I love that.
That's well said. Listen, MAGA, if there were no more woke libs in the U.S., you would still be in the same situation. You would still be getting ripped off by the corporate oligarchs and the billionaire class. There would be less of you to rip off, so they would rip you off at a higher rate so they could sustain their level of wealth, and the gap would get wider and wider. And then who would you blame? That's kind of the point, right? Felice, my friend, thank you so very, very much. This was great today. Thank you, mods. Thank you, guys. Are you live?
Oh yeah, I'll be the People's Receipts. That's my show. That's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It is. It starts at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. Be there. And then tomorrow on Tuesdays, I do the broadcast with Dr. Danny and Mandy. And we specifically talk about how conservative policy, all the stuff we've talked about maternal mortality rates rising, infant mortality rates. Oh, Ken Paxton is now suing a New York doctor for providing the AB pill to somebody. So we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, tomorrow and many other things. So, and the broadcast is on Tuesdays, but it starts a little earlier because Danny has to do clinicals and she does it in between. So it is 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. But I'll see you guys later today, 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. Thank you so much, Fax. This is a great way to start the week.
Thank you, Felice. I appreciate you guys. Again, we're going to rate our friend USMC Angry Vet Matt. Tell him we said hi. Thank you, mods. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we'll see you all tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time. Thanks, friend.